two, and I've asked the IT director to set you up with the Millis email account.
That's wonderful, thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Pete Berube. I'm chairperson of the Millis Finance Committee. Tonight is the 5th of October, and we have a full agenda, as we will for the next few weeks. So we're going to get right to it. We will forego introductions. The attendees of the Finance Committee were all present tonight, and our names and everything are on the agenda. So we're just going to get right to it. Calling the meeting to order, and I'm going to invite Lisa Harden to come up to, oh, I don't see Lisa.
She is out copying some things.
Okay.
Maybe it's for our.
Um,
Want me to go get her? I can go get her. if you want.
No, she'll be in a second, that's all. Thank you very much, appreciate it. So we have a couple of other members that are gonna come in as well. We're gonna go over, I'll just go over the agenda real quick. We're gonna go over the, one of the citizen petition, titled here, the Rock Lawn Petition to Article Presentation and Discussion. Then we're gonna start with the Council on Aging, Ms. Patty Keogh. I've asked that Mr. Klockow come in and speak to the senior/community center as well, so he'll be here later in the evening. And then we have Mr. McKay with a couple of items, including a lead line service inventory and replacement plan, as well as PFAS treatment update. And then we'll go into our discussion of warrant articles with the town administrator and likely the finance director. So without further ado, Ms. Harden, the floor is yours.
Do you need help?
Well, sorry, I didn't get time to staple. So you'll just have to.
We will manage.
All right. I have a wonderful quote here about benefit of preserving history.
Would you just kindly let us take care of this and get yourself ready to go? And
All right, well, I'm gonna look at this one first.
okay,
and I'll give you the others.
we're on a tight agenda.
I know. This is important.
Thank you.
She'll give it to you. Thank you.
Pass those out. And these are, each one's a section. There's 12 here, so there's more than you need, probably.
All right, we got
All right.
New guy duty. Thank you.
You're on the jump seat, so we'll put you to work.
Thank God I moved.
Could you imagine?
We'd be here till tomorrow.
Well, I guess I need one of those anyway.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Floor is yours.
I'm Lisa Harden, 56 Walnut Street. I'm here to present my citizens petition, which is for the town to purchase the building known as Rock Lawn. It's also known as Rossi's Restaurant, Jasper Hill, Holiday Shop, Van Cleek Mansion. And here's a picture of it. For anybody who doesn't recognize it, it's on the corner of Union Street and Exchange Street, Route 115. It's on a major intersection in town. If anyone's interested, I have floor plans. All right. I'm going to start out with a quote from a relatively well-known in the Massachusetts history community, Henry Steele Commager, who was a professor at Amherst College. He was talking about the point of studying and preserving history. So he said it connects each generation with something bigger than itself, links past, present, and future in a meaningful continuum, and by recalling the indebtedness of the present to the past, dramatizes the responsibility of the present to the future. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that it's one of the major reasons that I was interested in preserving this building. There are a lot of people who live in Millis now who aren't aware of the history of Millis and why we're called Millis and where we came from. And this building was built by Helen Millis, who was the daughter of Lansing Millis, who our town is named after. He lived in the area of what's now called Oak Grove Farm. He had way more land than that. He owned all the way from there down to almost to this lot, and hundreds of other acres. He was a wealthy man. Anyway, he came to Millis, and for various reasons, there's an article in there about it. When Millis split off from Medway, we were originally called the East Medway. In 1885, they decided to name it after him, and he was one of our first select board members. Unfortunately, he died a couple months after the town was founded. But his family continued to live here. His wife, Harriet, also known as Hattie, for those up at the Glen Ellen development, Lansing, Hattie, and his two children, Helen and Henry, are, all have roads named after them up there. Anyway, his daughter Helen decided she was going to have a summer place here. So this is her summer place. She married a man from New York City, Livingston Van Cleek, and they ended up building this property. There was another house actually on this lot at the time, so they convinced that person to move their house across the street. And it's, I can't remember, it's right across the street. It's the old, right across Union Street. I can't remember that.
Pollard House.
Pollard House, I can't remember, yeah. So anyway, that's how that house got over there. So and there's some old photos on the back here of what it was when it was being built. And it was quite the showplace at the time, and it really still is. It was a Queen Anne Victorian. It was built by a well-known architect at the time from Boston. And there aren't that many houses in Millis that were actually designed by an architect from Boston. It has, she spared no expense. There, for example, the tiles around the fireplace are from Italy. There's gorgeous stained glass. It's just beautiful. And before I get any further, I'm just going to say that I'm going to have 3 open houses in October on, not this weekend, but the next 3 Sundays, 12 to 3, when anybody in town can come by this property and look at it for yourselves and see how beautiful it is. Okay. So we have, the main questions I'm getting are, why should we buy it? And how much will it cost, and what will we do with it? So I passed out, is there any extras there of the financial? All right, this large spreadsheet, it's so large because the print that I got from the treasurer was so small that I didn't think anyone would be able to read it. I couldn't. This is a sample. This is not necessarily what it would cost. This is an estimate. And this is based on our actually having to borrow 1.25 million, which I am positive we would not have to pay that amount. I am in communication with Tom Roach, who's the owner. He purchased the building in 1987, when it was quite run down. It had, Eleanor Cole was living there, and she was elderly and couldn't keep it up. So it was really a fixer-upper at the time. And he fixed it up, and he did turn it into a restaurant, which it was not before. And that is part of the reason why it can't be on some National Historic Register, because it's no longer just a single-family house. But he was recognized by the Mass Historical Commission for preserving it in such a beautiful manner and keeping as many of the details of the original building as possible. And he's owned it since then. And he grew up in Millis. He went to Millis High. He's lived here his whole life. He would like, he's getting older himself, so he would like someone to buy it that would preserve it. And since it has no protection, he and I are afraid that if, no matter who buys it other than the town, they could tear it down or chop it up into condominiums, and condominiums, with 3 or 4 people trying to decide how to manage this house, it's not going to stay very nice for very long. Or it could be gone. And I think that that would really be a shame for the town of Millis because of its connection to our founding father, Lansing Millis, and its connection to history. And it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous building. It's unique in this area. It's on a main street. Everybody, when I go to other towns, they go, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And I think that the residents of the town of Millis and our school children should know more about our history. And this would be a perfect place to teach them about it and to save a lot of artifacts that are currently floating around town in various people's homes. I have been talking to an older generation in Millis who are trying to figure out what they're going to do with all their Millis paraphernalia. And their kids don't want it because kids don't want that stuff, so. And their kids don't live here anymore because they can't afford to live here. So the people who do live here would like to have a nice place to put it. For example, one woman that I talked to has a clock that was built by a company in Millis that, can't remember the name of it, but it was down by Holbrook, the Holbrook Bells place, which is near where the current police station is, across the street. And it's a beautiful grandfather clock, and she doesn't have any place to put it, and this would be perfect. Just as an example. That's just one example. I'm not saying we should buy this for one clock. There are a lot of other things out there. And so that's one thing that would be great to do, is to have a place to display things. But I'm not saying that it should be a museum. It has beautiful spaces for activities. The whole main floor can be, some of them are big rooms, but there's other rooms that have these sliding doors, so you can close them off, and you could have many different activities going on at the same time. There is a commercial kitchen in it, and it's in good shape because it was just being used by Jasper Hill maybe a year ago. So it's got a kitchen and a large dining area. a lot of meeting rooms. It has a bar, cafe area. Not sure how I'm going to get an alcohol license yet, but I'm working on it. I think Friday evenings at 5 would be a great place to meet there. It has 70 parking spaces. It's handicapped accessible on the first floor now. So we could, if we bought it, we could really just start using it right away. At least the first floor of it. In terms of public access, you need handicapped accessibility to the second floor, which we don't have yet. But for historic buildings, there are grants available to provide some kind of elevator that could go from the first floor to the second floor once we owned it. You can't apply for grants when you don't own the building yet. Let's see. All right. In terms of how to pay for it, my proposal is we would borrow the money and pay for it over 25 years. So this particular handout that I showed you starts at the first year being 112,000 and then going down to 52,000. I did approach the Community Preservation Committee, and they decided to table it because they didn't want to be on the hook for the entire amount. I'm proposing that maybe the town and the CPC could come to some agreement where they would pay part and the town would pay part. It is certainly possible to pay this kind of money because in May of 2021, we purchased the 20 acres of the Braun property for $1 million, and that's what we're doing. That's how we're paying for that. We were told at the town meeting it would come out of the general fund. And we seem to have some money right now, so I think it would be a good idea to use it for something that might last a little while. Let's see. Oh, possibility of revenue generating enterprises. Because it's got this commercial kitchen, you can rent out, I know there's a market for renting out commercial kitchens to people who either want to have a catering business or have a home-based business of baked goods, and their home kitchen doesn't meet the Board of Health regulations. So they can rent out this kitchen for a couple hours a week or a couple hours a day or whatever their needs are. And that would be a way to raise some money. You could also rent out meeting space. I don't think it's entirely what's the word? I don't know. I don't think we should base whether we're going to purchase this or not on whether we can raise enough money immediately to pay for itself. We've never said that about any other building that we're proposing now or in the past. And part of what government does is they do things that maybe a private business wouldn't think made sense financially because they couldn't make a profit at it. But sometimes there are things that should be done that you don't necessarily make a profit monetarily at, but that are good for other reasons. Just as a little bit of background in terms of what condition the building's in 2019, the owner, Tom Roach, re-roofed the entire building with 30-year roof shingles, painted the entire building, repaired all necessary exterior woodwork, pointed and relighted the chimneys and installed 3 new high-efficiency heat furnaces and air conditioning units for the first floor. It also has a sprinkler system. So it's in pretty good shape. I've talked to the building inspector. He's very familiar with the building. I've talked to the economic development person, whatever his full title is, about grants. There really aren't any grants to purchase historic buildings, but there are grants once you own them to help refurbish them or fix them up, or if you have some specific thing that you want to do to it, there are grants available for that. So I understand that there would be an operating budget required. In my proposal, I have asked for a committee to be appointed to study what the uses would be and and find out more about what the costs are. I'm still waiting a little bit for some costs from the owner. However, because he always leased it out when it was being heated to a normal temperature, unlike this building right now, he only has what a carrying cost would be. But that would be helpful, so I'm gonna get that. I have what the water is, water and sewer and tax, what his taxes are, but that's not really too helpful right now. Let me think. Well, did I cover everything? Operating costs. The owner has said he would like the town to buy it because he thinks we will preserve it, and he's not really sure anyone else will. So he's willing to negotiate. He will come down. He's definitely will take less than 1.25. So I guess what I'm asking from you is, I know you're not voting tonight. If you would consider some kind of committing some kind of funds to it. And I'll see if I can get the rest. I'm going to approach the community preservation again and see if I can get some commitment from them to do something, maybe a third. So I guess I'll just throw out 2/3. I don't know. I don't have a set amount at the moment.
Okay. Lisa, I'm going to ask that the committee and the audience, if there's questions, that we start with questions. We have about 10 more minutes on the agenda, and I'm not going to I'm not going to cut off discussion promptly at 7:35, but we have a full agenda, so I'll try to keep to that. And so you're correct, we're not going to vote on it tonight. I'd like to start with questions for Lisa while she's here, and we certainly can invite her back if there are more. So I'll open it up to start with Ms. Boyardi.
Lisa, sorry, thank you. Wonderful presentation. I don't know if this is actually on. Really wonderful presentation. I'm very familiar with the building. You mentioned grants could be still available. Thank you. You mentioned that the grants could be available. But since it's no longer on the registry of Circa, can those grants still be available?
Well, it was actually never on the registry.
No, I know. You're saying,
yes.
you said they are still available even though it's not on the registry.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned also the improvements that were done for the first floor. I saw the roof being done. I saw a lot of work being done. You keep referencing to the first floor. The improvements that were made for the heating and AC, does that affect the second floor as well, or is there going to be a need for that?
Right now, it's fine, but because right now the public wasn't allowed on the second floor, he didn't put as much money into that.
Okay, so there are improvements that will be needed for that.
Maybe, I don't
Right.
know.
And my next question was about finding out what the CPA will give, because If we have a better understanding of what they'll give us, then we'll have a better understanding of what we might be able to provide. And last but not least, you keep referencing that Tom has a bottom line. It might be behooving to Tom and yourself, oh, I lost me again, to give us that bottom line so we have a better understanding of what we're really looking at as far as providing funds for this beautiful building. Last but not least, this building was built when my child was 4 and was going to Big Birds and told me that he was going to buy it. And I said, that's lovely. He says, yep, my family and I are going to live in there. And I said, well, it's so big, Daddy and I can too. He goes, no, you've got your own house. I will leave it now to somebody else.
Can I just respond?
Please.
In terms of you and the CPC, it's like, you both want me to get an answer from the other one first, and
No,
Yeah,
more
it's
of
the chicken
an
and the egg here.
approximate. You know, they said they're willing to fund it. Well, they must know how
No.
much they're willing to fund.
they didn't say that. They said they wouldn't do the whole thing. But they have, in the conservation, you may recall the Conservation Commission presented a $200,000 study that they wanted. They voted to put in $70,000 to see if the town would support something, and the town didn't, at least at the last town meeting. So that's why that fell off. But I will ask them again if they will come up with some percentage, but it would be less than 100%. And his bottom line,
Lisa, please
it's
don't.
not $1 million. It's-
Please don't speculate on his bottom line, because it's not the place for it. Anyway.
Okay.
I have got a couple technical
asked.
questions I'll just kind of barge in. You had mentioned sprinkler system, and I just wanted to verify that we're talking a fire suppression system.
Yes.
And do you know if that's all, the entire square footage floor plan, all covered?
I know it's in the first and second floor.
Okay.
I can check on the third.
Do you know about the zoning of the building? I assume since it's been both a restaurant and residential, it's probably some sort of mixed use. Do you know what the zoning is of
Well-
that
It's
particular
C.
facility?
It's zoned commercial.
Okay.
I looked at it today.
Is it, I'm not sure if it's grandfathered that way, because when zoning came in, when zoning came in, it was residential.
We should
I don't
know
know.
that going
I
forward.
looked
so
at the
we'll-
property card today, and it
Thank you.
says C on
Yeah,
the property
you
card.
have the property card there, and that's what the building inspector is saying, that it's zone commercial, but if the town wants to buy it, they can easily get it rezoned to.
Okay. The Braun property, I advocated for, and I'll try not to make this more opining and opinion, but I advocated for it because it was a 31B, which is basically an agricultural, and the town
61,
had.
61A.
61A, thank you. It was the town had first right of refusal, and I advocated for us exercising that and the town controlling its destiny on that. And if that meant selling it, great. It meant that the town reaped the rewards of that. And that was probably the primary factor for me supporting it. Do you know, I don't think there is in this particular case, but I wanted to clarify and confirm that there's no such first right of refusal
No,
on this
there
property.
isn't. And that's why there's no price that we can meet.
Right.
We have
Meaning
to
it-
negotiate a price.
It also means that there's really no timeline for, I mean, anybody can swoop in and buy that. I believe it's listed. Anybody could buy that at any time, and the town
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get, right of refusal.
That's correct.
Okay, right. Thank you. Mr. Stedman?
I have two questions. The first one is, do we know if there are any potential liabilities? It's an older house. Do we know if there's any asbestos or lead paint or any other liabilities that the town may be inheriting?
I don't know for sure. I know that he renovated it in the 1980s, which was after everybody knew about asbestos, but I can certainly ask him that.
Okay.
That didn't seem to be a reason that you couldn't use it for a restaurant. Anyway,
But it is an unknown then.
at the moment, yes.
And this was listed, there was a for sale sign for quite some time that has been taken down. So two questions with that. Is it still on the market? And if so, what is the price, the asking price?
Well, it's still on the market, and it's still on the market for the price that it was when it was with Sotheby's. But he hasn't.
Do we know what
he
that
has
was?
Yes, the 1.25, that's why I'm
That's where that
using
came
that
from.
figure.
Thank you.
But it's not, he hasn't had an offer. And I think he was trying to sell it to like a bed and breakfast or another restaurant, or lease it. He tried to lease it to another restaurant. And, you know, because the market lately has been pretty bad for restaurants, he hasn't been able to find anybody, so
Thank you.
he would like the town.
Mr. Underhill?
Just a couple of questions about, so this building has been on the market for quite some time.
Couple years, anyway, yeah.
Right. Has there been a building inspection done?
I know the
property.
building inspector's been in it, whether it's like a full, I don't know what he calls it, an inspection. It's not like a house inspection where before you buy a house, you hire somebody to go in and do it. I'm sure he hasn't necessarily gone down a checklist and looked at everything.
A lot of homeowners, and especially business owners, will do their own inspection before putting it on the market, so they're not surprised. I was just wondering
Right.
if you had something.
I don't know if that's something that can be requested of our building inspector or
And
what.
that was my next question for the chair. If we could perhaps get the building inspector to give their opinion on the property, on its just its general condition.
Good point.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine, I can ask him. Or,
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Garzon?
What has the second floor been used for
well,
most recently?
I actually haven't been in it when it was Jasper Hill. I was in it when it was Rossi's Restaurant. At that time, the way the what's it called, ADA, the regulations
American with Disability.
work is if you can offer someone the same thing on the first floor as you have on the second floor, then it's okay. So there would be events there that were on both floors, but because people could participate fully by, you know, meeting people and eating and whatever on the first floor, they didn't have to have an elevator to the second floor. So the same thing could happen now. I think it would be good in the future to have some kind of handicapped accessibility to the second floor. But right now, if we were to buy it, we could use the first floor anyway, and the second floor could be used for non-public things, like people could have an office up there and have their files up there or whatever.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
One second, I'll get to you. Question, Lisa, that I hope you'll be able to get back to us on. Please don't start unrolling plans now. Could you tell us what the square footage of each of the functional floors is? I don't need to know attic or basement, but what the square footage is of each of the
I can.
livable,
I will get back
usable
to you.
floors.
It's my understanding it's
Roughly.
about 8,000 square feet. It actually should be on this thing from the assessor's office. But anyway, I can get back to you on that.
Thank you.
One last,
Mr. Underhill?
This is what I do for a living, is rehabbing historical buildings. This is fascinating, but just so we can keep in mind, 521 CMR is a building code that falls under ADA, and under the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board, if 1/3 of the value of the property is spent in improving it, it triggers a full ADA compliance, which will mean all areas of the building will have to be accessible. So at a $1.25 million cost, we're looking at around $360,000. So just to keep in mind, if we find out that, hey, it's going to need a $300,000 roof, another $60,000 worth of repair will trigger that requirement. And it's full ADA compliance, and that's a 3-year rolling total. It's not just a one-time.
Okay.
Just,
What was that citation?
it's 521 CMR is the applicable building code, and it falls under the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board, MAAB. It's called the MAP trigger.
so if they do more than a third of it,
It triggers a full ADA compliance for the
Okay.
building. It
Is-
sounds like they did a ton of work.
He
I'm just-
did. He
I'm
did a
just putting
huge
it out
amount
there
of
that
work.
If we find out that it needs more, we may
I-
want to keep in mind that a full ADA would be,
Well, the full ADA is like putting an elevator in,
Yes.
maybe? And there are grants available to pay for all or part of that, so,
I'm
That would be
just
something.
trying to get the clear picture.
no, I'm
Yeah, once we
glad
can see
you're,
Ms. Boyardi?
Thinking about it.
You mentioned, I love the building, so you can tell I do. I've got a lot of years of watching it be built.
I don't know, we're
and
going to fight
fixed.
about who gets to live there, though.
Having had a home commercial business, I had a Jelly and Jam business out of my home. And I was board certified because it was Jellies and Jams. But I will tell you, there's a huge need for commercial kitchens. Huge need. And having, I mean, that's in itself is an asset. And with the lot of people still working from home or having home-based businesses and not wanting to bring somebody to their home for a meeting, it would be ideal on the second floor to be able to have meetings and offices. So I think the building has a lot of potential. And I think if you can find out some of the answers to those questions, we'd be better informed. And the historical value. So, but I just wanted to throw out about that, the commercial kitchen is a huge, huge thing.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Please.
Scott Fusey, Scott Fusey, 411 Union Street. Great presentation, Lisa. It is an icon to the town. My concern is the town purchasing it, the timing right now. There's a lot on the town meeting agenda. You're talking high school, senior center. We don't know the unknowns of this building, what we're gonna have to do to go in to get it up to standards. So I think more information is needed. I think if we get that information, we can go forward and then figure it out. We also need to look at grants to try to purchase it, to put this on the town meeting, to buy it for the cost that it is. I just don't see the appetite of people at town meeting and residents wanting to try to purchase it at such a high price, so thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Reyes?
Hi. So I did also do a little bit of research on the property, and right now, the current value on Realtor is $968,000. Obviously, the listing price is higher. But I was just wondering if the current owner, wants the town to purchase it, has anybody talked to him about donating the property or giving it at a significantly less amount? I don't know about any sort of tax issues or anything or breaks that the town can,
Well, he's.
that you can get for donating a
I
historical
don't think he's a
property.
multi-billionaire. And
No, I
a
understand
million
that, but
dollar
I'm just-
property. No, I'm just saying.
I understand that. I'm not saying, I'm just asking if you guys have exhausted all, options if he wants the town to purchase the property and the town wants the property, there's a lot of money and there's no proposed uses of it. I think it's gonna be hard to convince people to spend $1 million on a property that we don't know if it's gonna generate revenue or house anything for the town. So I was just wondering if you had discussed that with him.
I have had ongoing discussions with him. He would like to see if there's he's trying to see if there's any interest here in the town. I highly doubt that he would just donate it. That's the negotiating part of it, and I'm a individual who lives in town. I don't necessarily have full authority from the Board of Selectmen to be
You have none.
negotiating with this person.
None of us have,
No, I
none of us have
understand
any
that.
until it's given by the voters of the town. Okay, Mr. Duffy?
Yeah, thank you. Jim Duffy, Exchange Street Mills. I have a couple comments, couple questions. First to Peter. Is that 300 and something thousand cumulative or one time? In other words,
It's a rolling total over 3 years, so if you spend
3 years, okay.
$100,000 every year, you would not, because it'll fall
okay,
off.
so we don't want to do that.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One comment Ms. Harden said about, we've never said, what are we going to do with the building or something when we buy it? Well, it's time to start asking those questions, right? And I think you'll get general opinion from everybody that it's time to start. One of the things that I would, I like old houses like that. I do radon work. I hate to work on them, let me tell you. They're brutal, but they're beautiful. I don't know how they built those things. But, so I'd love to have it, personally, as part of the town. I think we need to figure out how to sell something to pay for it. All right, I think any proposal coming to the town ought to be some mechanism to say, how are we gonna offset costs? One option in real estate world is you take an option to buy something. And I would propose that given the timelines here, given all of the unknowns that we would like to know, then maybe an option to buy it sort of a right of first refusal until we actually come up with a good plan. Oversight of commercial activities, who's gonna do that? What's the liabilities? You know, there was a recent blurb on a restaurant couple that have started a kitchen like this, and, you know, they're sold out, right? It's a great idea. And I'd love to be able to walk down and have a drink on Friday afternoons. So take an option. Are we, the town, I'm asking this, are we asset rich? We have assets that we can leverage?
Like land poor?
Well, whatever we are, right? So there is cost loss if we buy this. There's taxes of something, there's operating budgets, and there's a hell of a lot of unknowns that I think we ought to find a way to spread this out to, we can't make a decision on November, because I'll pretty much, my feeling would be the decision would be no, to not spend the money. I could be wrong, but that's the pulse I get. So,
Please wrap up.
That's my,
Okay, all right. All right, thank you, Lisa. Your proposal is not without merit. It just needs a lot of discussion and consideration. So I want to thank you for coming in. Mr. McKay.
So Jim McKay, 416 Village Street, one of the 3 members of the Community Preservation Commission are in the room that heard Lisa's presentation on Thursday. We asked the same questions. We voted to table it because Lisa will come back with these answers to the questions. There was an interest amongst all the members there of the same interest that I believe everything that was the previous speakers got up and spoke in favor of it. The idea of coming up with an amount, it's just not, it's, you know, $1.something million would use all the funds that the community preservation has. We get 1% of our tax dollars that come in. So that everything just can't go to the Community Preservation Commission that the town doesn't want to buy. Or doesn't want to fund fields, fixing stuff and stuff like that. So it's up to this board and the select board to come up with something of what they're gonna, what are they gonna pony up? And then the Community Preservation Commission will take a vote and see how much is available for funding for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McKay, will the Conservation Commission, or the Preservation, your group,
Yep.
CPC, you know, there's
Yep.
like 3 CPCs
Yeah,
in
there
town. Will that committee vote on, make a recommendation on the petition?
If it comes back to us, we will, yes.
What does it need to come back to you with in order for you to
Some
vote
of the
for it?
questions that were
Okay.
asked of her.
Okay. Would you kindly, I request that you kindly forward the results of that vote if and when it happens?
Sure,
To us,
absolutely.
so that we're aware? Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I just make one other comment that I forgot to
Quickly,
say
please.
earlier?
Yep.
It is within 4 doors of Kennedy Terrace, so it's very close to a large senior population, and because it's handicapped accessible already on the first floor, and it's a beautiful, welcoming space, I think that there could be, not just those of us who love the building who don't live near there, but there's a lot of people within walking distance that I think would be able to use the building. So I will try and get answers to all your questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice job, Lisa.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep us moving, so I'm going to ask that Ms. Kao come up, and we're going to have a presentation on, on the senior center.
Hi, good evening. Patty Kao, Council on Aging. Tonight, we are going to have Board Member Elizabeth Duran come and present our vision of the new senior/community center. We also have Board Members Bert Lannon here, Chris McCaffrey, Bill Brown, and Meredith St. Sevilla to answer any of your questions. Elizabeth?
Does it look like that?
Yes.
Deirdre, can you put the presentation on the screen or ensure that it's being broadcast?
I I can try to, I didn't download it, but I
have it here, if that helps.
Probably too late, but it will be uploaded so that people that are watching can access it. And I'd like to, since we all have it, if you can do your presentation with hard copies, I'd ask that we do that. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Elizabeth Derwin. I live at 60 Middlesex Street, and I'm a member of the Council on Aging Board. And so the first slide we have in the presentation is just a project overview. So in 2019, the town received a grant from the state to do a feasibility study on
Your mic's not working.
a new senior center. And that was approved at town meeting that we go ahead with that. And Abacus Architects was chosen as the architectural partner in this. It was chosen by the Permanent Building Committee with Council on Aging input. Then in early 2020, the Council on Aging spent time documenting the current programming needs and the future programming needs. We had some visiting sessions on what we anticipated a new senior center to look like, and we did a visit to the Medfield Senior Center, which was a newly constructed senior center. Unfortunately, COVID hit in 2020 and progress was stalled, but we picked up again in 2021. At that time, some meetings were held between the Council on Aging, the Library, and the Recreation Department to talk about combined space needs within the town for those types of services. And the Permanent Building Committee and the Council on Aging formed a working group to continue to move progress with this. This was definitely a collaborative effort between those two groups. Abacus, the architectural partner, came forward with 3 options to present to the town as how we could move forward with the new senior community center. We got cost estimates for each of those options. Now in 2022, we held 4 town-wide community focus group sessions to get input on what the town thought of each of those options. After that, the Council on Aging and the Permanent Building Committee made a recommendation to the Select Board of which option to put forward for the town meeting, and there is a warrant article on the November town meeting to see what the town wants to fund on that. So the next slide we go to, we talk about what's the need for a senior center. And today, 30% of the Millis population is made up of citizens who are age 60 or older. That's the definition of a senior through the state of Massachusetts. So we have a little graph there that shows you in 1999, when the current senior center opened in the basement of this building, the senior population of Millis was 1,070 people. Our last full census was in 2021, and at that point, the population of our seniors has grown to 2,620 people. So that's a 145% increase in that particular population. We get data from the Office of Elder Affairs in Massachusetts, and they project that by the end of this decade, the senior population could be 50% of the total town's population. So our current senior center is at the building downstairs, opened in 1999. And the space is what we would call uninviting, inflexible, and it doesn't adequately serve the population of our town. We cannot hold programs simultaneously because there was only one programming room. So if we wanted to hold 2 programs even in a day, that involves setup and takedown, a lot of space in between. So we're not able to offer, a class and some kind of an exercise program and some kind of a game all at the same time. It's a one after another serial type of a situation. A lot of people don't realize that our townwide social worker is housed in the senior center, and she deals one-on-one with people who are coming in for services. There's no privacy in that office for the social worker, and she has to talk to people in an open area and discuss very private matters. It's an unfortunate setup that we have right now. If you go down into the space, you'll see an awful lot of the square footage is taken up by a vast hallway that runs down the middle of the space. It makes the space very inflexible, and it's a large part of the square footage. So we did have to put the reception area in the hallway there. It's not a great spot, but that's where anyone that comes in has to be received.
Can I ask someone to unmute the remote laptop?
He's coming down. He's on his way.
Working on it, Deidre.
Is that Deirdre who did that?
Wasn't us.
Okay, the designated dining area can accommodate 24 people, and if we ever want to have some kind of
The
a,
designated what, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair?
the
Dining
dining area, where there's dining tables, that can accommodate 24 people. If we want to have a larger celebration of some kind, we have to move into the programming room, and we cut off there at the most we can accommodate at any of those functions is 70 people. There's also a lack of storage. So in our programming room, we have tables and chairs that we can use for some of these programs, but if they're not needed for a program, they're always, kind of stacked up against the walls. As people are working on projects, there's no closets to store things in, so everything's out and about. There's just no storage area at all in the facility. The need for our senior center, the senior center really focuses in three main areas. It's services, it's socialization, and it's well-being. So in the area of well-being, one of the goals all of us have is to keep people independent and living in their homes as long as possible. And we all know exercise, flexibility, balance, mobility, those are all critical elements to keeping someone independent in their home. So we have an exercise room. We also bring in experts to give classes to keep people flexible and mobile. In the area of services, we are the conduit to hook people up with services that are available at both the federal, the state, and the local level. So we can match people to the resources that they need, and the social worker handles a lot of that. In the area of socialization, there's really two parts to that. There's ad hoc, meaning it's a place where people can come and they can congregate, they can meet, they can share a small meal or some coffee, they can be around people and have companionship. The other end is the more structured socialization things, which would be classes or lectures or trips. A senior population is a population that's very vulnerable to isolation. There are people in this group that are living on their own for the first time. They're mourning and grieving the loss of a partner or a spouse, friends and family members, people that they used to spend their time with. These are very isolating types of activities, as well as deafness, chronic illness. Those types of things are very isolating to people, and the socialization aspect of a senior center is geared to keeping these people happy, healthy, mentally well, and again, living on their own, in their own homes and being independent. So what was adequate for our town for a senior center 23 years ago in 1999, when our population was 1,070 people, simply is no longer adequate today. So that, I think, covers the need. So Abacus Architects came up with three options for us to consider. The first option was to take the existing space, to renovate it and put an addition on it, and the addition would go out towards the back of this building. It would be a two-story structure. Total square footage was 15,500 square feet, cost of $15.5 million. And we also figured out at the time, for an average home price in Millis, what would be the annual tax bill increase on that, and that was $258 per home per year. The second was to use Cassidy Farm, town-owned land, on the corner of Exchange and Island Road, to build a new facility. The facility would be for 16,000 square feet. It would be on one level. The cost is $16,266 per homeowner per year. Then the third option was to do the Cassidy site building, but with a gym. So that was 22,400 square feet, $21 million, and $350 million a year. Now, there were some assumptions I just want to quickly go over on what some of these numbers come to. One is that any project, and Wayne will talk about this longer, that the town takes on should have a life of 50 years. We want to make sure we get a good return on the investment, so we look to build something that'll last at least 15 years. These numbers are based on beginning construction in the fall of 2023. It was at a bond rate of 4.25% over 30 years. We are very aware that the federal funds rate has gone up to 3%, and this is something we probably have to explore. It's actually something I think we'd like to come back to the Finance Committee for some advice on how we should handle that at town meetings. That's a legitimate question that we know is going to come up. And we also know that there's going to be additional operating costs to run this. We're very aware that putting this out at Cassidy Farm, there are additional costs, and we know that those funds have to be covered somewhere. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, over May and June of this year, we held 4 community-wide focus groups to get input from the people in the town, what it is that they wanted to do. We presented the 3 options, and we asked them to identify what they thought are the strengths and weaknesses of each option, and then we also asked them to vote which of the 3 options they would like to go with. So on the Veterans Memorial Building, the biggest positive to people on that is that it was the downtown local setting, which makes perfect sense to us. You know, we like the idea, this is the town hall, the schools are right here, it's the downtown local setting. Use of an existing building was very appealing. We weren't taking some open space, we were making use of something that we already have, and that was the lowest cost of the 3 options by $500,000. The negatives people saw is that it would be limited space for any further expansion. The plan that Abacus came up with would really use every bit of available land that's left here. So that would be it. There'd be no place else we could go. There'd be limited parking. We know that if we build a new senior center, it's going to attract a lot more people into the center on a daily basis. Right now on this campus, parking can be very limited. The plan was only an additional 16 spaces over the course of the entire building. And when we're bringing in more people and our senior center population continues to grow, that was definitely come up as a problem. Limited outdoor space. As you know, our climate's changing a bit. We're able to spend more and more time outdoors. If COVID has taught us nothing, it's that time outdoors is encouraged for good health. There's very limited outdoor space here. That was brought up. Disruption during construction. We would have to figure out for the 18 months worth of construction, where would the senior center go? That's certainly a big issue to deal with. Plus, we know that there'd be a lot of disruption to the town offices during construction. Construction going on is very loud, it's very noisy, it can be dirty, and we still have to keep running our town. There'd be unforeseen issues, we believe, and due to the age of the VMB. It's a harder thing to think about than new construction. And the end result is a 2-story building, not ideal for a senior center. And although there would be an elevator, that elevator is remote to the senior center location. You'd have to go out and come around. So now we go to Cassidy Farm without the gym. The pros there, new construction, again, kind of in a direct contrast to the unknown things that could happen when adding on to an old building. 1-story design, which is ideal. Ample parking. It's a 32-acre spot. We could put as much parking as we want there, and there's ample outdoor space. The things that were brought up as not as ideal, we don't have that great downtown location that the VMB gives us. We are using some outdoor space that exists now as a field, and it was $500,000 more costly than the VMB option. The Cassidy Farm with the gym, all of the pros are the same as without the gym, but we get a gym is another pro. And the cons is just that again was the most expensive of all of the options. So then, this was the pros and the cons. We also asked people to vote. What did they think was the best of the 3 options? 79% of the people that cast a vote chose one of the 2 Cassidy site options. I think if you go back to the pros and cons list, people just thought there was a little too much risk in this building. And when you were done, we weren't sure that we have no expansion, whatever. So 80% of the people thought Cassidy Farm was the way to go. But at all 4 of those sessions, and they were very well attended, there was a good deal of discussion, rightfully so, about the cost of this. So the Council on Aging decided the most prudent thing to do at this point was to put forth the Cassidy Farm option without the gym, recognizing that it was about, I think it was a $6 million price difference between those 2. That doesn't preclude adding a gym later. Certainly that land all still exists. If it's not a gym that the town wants to add out there, it could be courts, it could be whatever it is we want. So this would be a great first step, not precluding the use of a gym in the future, and acknowledging that this is an expensive project, and we want to acknowledge that we heard that concern from the people. So what will this new site deliver us? There's a picture here. Now, I just want to make sure you know this is sort of a architectural rendering. It's not a design photo of what it would actually look like. But what it points out, it's a new modern building, but that fits into the aesthetic of a rural town like Millis. Also, if you consider that this is on the Cassidy Farm site, it pays a bit of a homage to the fact that it's a former farm site and that it is in a rural setting. if we go ahead with the project, we could end up with something completely different, but that would be the general avenue that we'd like to go in. So what will we get? An exciting new era for Millis seniors, our largest growing population, and this is the start of showing commitment to seniors and a welcoming place for them to go. Welcoming, inviting space where you can go to socialize, learn, exercise, and access those services that we talked about. The space will be available to other town groups in the evenings and the weekends when the senior center isn't open. So this is an investment not just in the senior center, but the community center aspect of it, as well as any open grounds that are there would be available to the town as well. The Cassidy Farm location provides uniquely a place in town that has the great hybrid indoor-outdoor possibility. Lots of space out there, and right across the street from Oak Grove Farm that already has existing walking trails, plus whatever kinds of things that we can bring into the outdoors. It also gives us the ability to start imagining how can we provide better services to our seniors in town. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a drop-off center for people suffering a bit of cognitive decline, where they have family members that are taking care of them? These family members could take these folks to a safe, welcoming, nurturing environment, leave them for a couple of hours, and get a break. Wouldn't it be great if those caretakers could go, get their errands done, maybe meet someone for lunch, get a break, knowing that those people were there? These are the types of things with the proper infrastructure we can start to envision to make our town more senior-friendly. Would have a modern kitchen that we could continue to do our Meals on Wheels with. You may not know this, Millis serves 8,000 meals a year through our Meals on Wheels program out of the kitchen downstairs. But in addition to that, we could also host some community functions in there with a well-stocked kitchen. Would have multifunction rooms that will allow us to deliver multiple programs simultaneously, so we're not single-threading everything through. Also, out at the Cassidy Farm site, we're opening up the possibility of things for the future, perhaps some revenue-generating enterprises that could happen out at that site. These are just ideas, but if you think about a senior center, wouldn't it be great if we could put an adult daycare center on that property as well? Maybe a physical therapist, or audiology, or eye care, or physical therapy. Types of things that seniors are very much in need of could all be at that site. Could be the start of some potential revenue-generating ideas for the town. There's also the possibilities we mentioned before of future outdoor expansion. It could be courts, it could be shuffleboard, it could be any kind of activities. But that Cassidy Site Farm is unique that it gives us all of that. So what are we asking for here? Council on Aging is asking for the Finance Committee's support at the town meeting. And this isn't just a vote for seniors, it's a vote for anyone caring for a senior as well, as we've talked about. So I also just want to leave you with a number that talks about the commitment of Millis to our senior population. If you look in our 2021 town report, you can see that the town spent $60 per senior per year in services to dedicated senior services. You can contrast that to $15,900 per year that's spent on someone in our school system. Now, the Council on Aging is certainly not saying that the schools and the senior center is equal, but that is a stark contrast. And I think seniors in the town have taken a backseat to a lot of things for a number of years, and we have a unique opportunity here to start to move this forward. So what we're doing is we're asking for your help, and we're asking you to help us get out of the basement.
Okay, thank you. You may want to stay up there.
I think, that's fine. If you have some questions, I'm wondering if you wanted Wayne to go first, because he was going to talk about it as well, or I can stay, it's up to you.
Why don't you stay? He's got an extra 15 minutes set aside for him, so
Okay.
we'll just we'll let you have the floor, and if you want to defer, certainly you
Sure. Okay.
exercise your prerogative. So I just want to be clear for us, so that we don't kind of reinvent the process. If we have general process questions, that's fine, and I have one, but I wanted to clarify that what's before us and what's going to be before the town is option 2. So if we have questions, why not option 1, or did you think of this? I don't think that would be productive at this point for us to say, well, what about a gym, or go into design issues with why not, did you think of this at Veterans Memorial Building, et cetera. Although I do have some of those questions, but I just want us to caution us so that we stay on track, because even though, although maybe Mr. Kaczynski might be able to clarify, or perhaps Ms. Rosenfeld, the article that is written, Article 7, doesn't specify the option. It basically lists $16 million. And so I think it needs to be clarified for us as to, are we, and will the town be considering option 2 as presented in this presentation, or $16 million, what does it get you? You know, perhaps it gets you a gym. I don't think it does, another $5 million. But, you know, it doesn't say Cassidy Field on there. I don't see where it says Cassidy Field. So is there the potential that Article 7 turns into Veterans Memorial Building at some point in time before ground is broken? Thank you, Ms. Rosenfeld.
Ellen Rosenfeld on the Select Board. The Select Board understands this to be the recommendation of the COA. So it is option 2. That's clear.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Is Ms. Irwin? Derwin, thank you. Thank you. I had a couple of kind of questions on your presentation, but given that answer, and given my earlier question, I'm not going to go into specifics on veterans, portions of the Veterans Memorial Building. Maybe we'll talk about that some other time over a cup of coffee. So I'm going to...
In the senior center, we can talk about.
In the senior center. And your presentation is excellent, and you made some very compelling points that those of us that care for parents, those of us that are on the, I'm not quite 60, but I'm getting there. I think we can all appreciate a lot of the benefits that this brings. So I'm just going to open it up for questions.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lohr.
Thank you very much. Very informative presentation. I just have 3 general questions or maybe clarifications as it goes forward. And the first is it possible for Abacus to provide bond details regarding the interest rates going up and what that impact would be? And then translation, what the impact would be to the average price?
So we didn't get that information from Abacus, we got it from the town treasurer's office.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry, okay.
With Abacus, so Abacus had the designs, we had another firm that did the costing.
Okay.
And then with that costing, the town treasurer's office gave us that information. So I think it's a valid question to say, do we need to go back and revisit the 4.25 and what the impact of that is?
Sure, okay, that'd be great, thank you. A couple other just smaller things on the pool, in terms of voting versus with the gym, without the gym. What was the sampling of that voting? Was that people who voted, or was that 100 people, 1,000 seniors, or
No,
anybody?
so it wasn't seniors, just to be clear.
Okay.
The focus groups were open to anyone in town. And I'm going to say we had an average of somewhere between 50 and 70 people at each one of those 4 sessions.
Okay,
Now, there may have been a little bit of overlap where some people came to 1 or 2 sessions, but if you said an average of 60 people showed up for the 4 sessions would be the pool that we drew that information from.
okay, great. And then the last question I have is in terms of the seniors that use it now, how many seniors use it on an average daily basis, and what would that look like with the new facility versus
Sure.
versus the current facility?
Right, so it's a tricky question in that, so we have data, 64 people a day to generally come into our center today. What we don't have is how many people come in, look around, and leave. And then we also have people that make use of the services of the center, but don't come in. So they can do some things over the phone. So we have talked to other senior centers in town, in surrounding towns, and there's no question that infrastructure is a key to drawing people into your senior center. So we expect to see a considerable amount of more people coming if the facility and the infrastructure are more welcoming and accommodating. But we don't have a specific number.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Unreal.
So this would be a significant expansion of the floor plan for the senior center. Do you have any projected expansion of services or staffing required as an annual cost that we'd have to put in the budget?
Sure, so one point that I wish I had made in the presentation, and now you're giving me a chance to do it, is that when we do the surveys of all of these senior centers, the expansion of programming is directly tied to volunteers. And what you find when you have the infrastructure that's inviting and welcoming, people want to start clubs. People get together and say, I want to start a photography club, and I'm going to have it at the senior center. People want to have, there are book clubs all over town, but they don't meet at the senior center. There are walking clubs that can kick off from there. So there definitely would be some increase in operating costs, because you consider we're out at Cassidy Farm in that, and we estimate the increase in costs to be between $150,000 and $300,000 a year. And there may be some increase in staffing as a volunteer coordinator, but the majority of the new programming, we believe, will be energized with volunteers that want to come in and be in that center and start new programs and lead new clubs.
Thank you.
I've got a couple more questions. I was at your presentation for the Capital Planning Committee, and one of the facts that you presented, or data points that you presented, was the one that you closed with here in terms of spending on seniors by the town versus spending on students, which I took exception to at the time. I still do. I'm not objecting to it. I don't like it, but that's just my opinion, and that's fine. I think we can both live with that.
Yeah, so just on that, like I said, I don't want to say that they should in any way be equal, but I do think they demonstrate the stark disparity between the two numbers. When you
Right.
talk about $60 and $16,000.
No doubt, no doubt. I wish there were a better way to explain that.
That's the only
Yeah.
way that,
And
only
I
reason
came
we're
up
doing
with
that.
I came up with an equally wrong statistic just now, because if we spent $16 million on a senior center for 64 visitors a day, the spending on seniors would go up to $250,000.
Yeah, but you're using
per
the
senior.
64 people that come today, not the 2,620
Which brings me to my
seniors
more
that are
worthwhile
current
question,
population.
and that is there any data on the amount of seniors that get turned away under the status quo? Are seniors coming into our senior center, which needs to be improved, which is at the minimum, in my opinion? It needs to be bettered. But do we know how many seniors walk away from our senior center because it's inadequate? In other
don't
words,
know.
if we build a $15, $16 million facility, we're relying on, if you build it, they will come.
Not
Do we
entirely,
know?
not entirely, just because, and I admit it's anecdotal evidence, but you can go to Walpole, for example, and you can talk to them about the senior center that they had that was probably better than our one right now, and what happened when they built a new one, and the explosion of people that go in there. Medfield built one maybe 3 years ago. They're already are out of space, because it's a place where people want to go and where they do go. So we don't have a hard number, but we do have anecdotal stories of our neighboring Council on Aging senior centers of what happens if you have the right infrastructure.
Okay. And just maybe one more follow-up along the similar lines of those questions. You'd mentioned that the VMB option doesn't allow for expansion, and that the senior population is projected to expand. What is that based on? Is that based on just existing population? Is it baby boomers and people, the demographic data that we have within town and census data? Or is it anticipate seniors moving to town?
So it's a number that comes from the Massachusetts Office of Elders Affairs, and they use a group at UMass Boston to do different town forecasting along different demographics. So I don't know the specifics of how UMass does that, but that's where that number comes from, is from the Office of Elder Affairs.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Duffy, please come up. I know how you like to use the microphone.
Nobody can hear me without it. Jim Duffy, Exchange Street. I have a question on these numbers versus these numbers.
Can you tell us what those
Yes,
numbers and
I'd
those
be
numbers are?
happy to, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. Klockow gave a presentation back in July to the Select Board, and they tallied all of the responses, which on this document say 141 respondents, of which 36.88% favored Cassidy Farm with a gym, 19.86% favored Cassidy Farm without the gym, for a total of, rounding off, 58%. 18.4% liked the Veterans Memorial Building. So the grand total there is 75%. 24.8, call it 25%, voted to not do anything. They weren't given that option at the meetings. They simply said there were 3 options. So there's a discrepancy in the numbers, and I understand the art of the sell, but
Ms. Derwin,
I'd like to get the details correct.
Hold on, please let him finish, and I will,
Oh, no.
are you,
I hope not.
Mr. Derwin, will you yield for an answer?
Just quickly.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm a-
The floor is yours.
haven't
Go ahead.
figured out I'm a stickler for details. I agree on the article regarding this for the town warrant, that it should be very specific as to what it is and where, if possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Derwin.
Yeah, so it's a real quick answer. 80% of the people that chose one of the 3 options chose one of the 2 Cassidy Farm ones, which would exclude the people that didn't choose. If you just look at the total number of people who responded to one of the 3 choices, take out the people who said no, and then you get 80% of the people.
75%. 75% are the 3 options total. Only 57% were for the Cassidy option item, according to this data from Mr. Klein. That's the.
Yeah, sure, I'm just
bringing
saying,
up
if you
the
take out the people that didn't respond, of those who chose an option,
Don't include
you'd
the
see
ones
that it works out that way.
But this says 12%, so that's not accurate.
There will be some time to clarify that, and just please know that it's a question. You know, there's questions on the financial aspect of it that should be clarified prior to town meeting, and you know, it will affect how people vote. And ultimately, when there's a vote, we'll know exactly where people stand, some, none, or all, you know, if they choose to vote. So, Ms. McGinnis.
Go ahead.
I yield to Joyce.
No, go right ahead.
Could someone please explain what the average cost of a home is nowadays for purposes of what is costing each homeowner?
Probably the person, if somebody's suited to answer that in the room, it's perhaps Ms. Johnston. If she does not know, then we'll get the answer from the assessor.
What is the
Average Millis home, medium home, median.
I'm sure the town administrator.
Reassessed value.
Without the, you do not have the rates certified for 2023 yet. When you look on the
Clear.gov.
DOR website, it says.
Just want to know the answer.
Say it when.
434.
Okay, so the answer of the average value, the average home value of Millis is $434,000.
So just the assessed value. So
Big
just to make
difference.
sure, Mr. Chair, what they're looking for the new construction at Cassidy would be $266 for a home that's $434,000, and work your way up from there. Also, the 32 acres that you mentioned, is that just the municipal land, or are you including the conservation land also? I think it's I just want to clarify someone.
16 acres of it is buildable.
I wrote down here something you stated, Mr. Chair, 32 acres.
Certainly not me.
For parking. No, through the chair.
Okay, thank you.
So if I remember the numbers correctly, I believe the site is 32 acres. 16 of it is buildable.
Okay.
And this particular facility would take up 2 of that 16.
Okay.
Ms. Boyardi,
I don't know if this is correct to ask, so if I'm.
I'll let you know, go ahead.
Yeah, I know you will.
Gotta get you a gavel.
If this should not go through, if the town decides that, no, it's too much money right now, would anyone consider using, I mean, we've just been offered a building for 1.25 million, so it sounds like that, and it's right near a bunch of seniors. And would you have considered working with another town, say Medway, to do a joint senior center? And
Okay. I am,
if it would, and I'll stop there.
Okay. I don't think it's relevant, because again, what's
No,
what's
if it should
before-
not go.
I'm not going to go into rhetoricals right now, just to keep us on track. We can have that discussion when we discuss things. But, you know, one of the questions that I had that maybe this will help is that my personal opinion is that the options that were considered are not that diverse. There are basically two options that are the same, you know, one with an add-on and one without, and then one here. My question is, and clearly there are other options that people are thinking of, hence we have 4 citizens petitions before us as well. I'm curious a little bit of kind of a general process issue. Were there others that you whittled down to get to these 3? And you don't need to go into, you know,
So I just want to- those
2
are
years
the-
of history on it, but.
No, those are the 3 options that Abacus presented. So I think Wayne can probably do a better job of answering this. We did look at the Rock Lawn building, and there's a number of issues as to why that is not good for a senior center, including that the rooms are very small, that there's no elevator. It's actually a 3-story building. That's where, I would say, the Rock Lawn building and then the 3 Abacus were the 4 that we thought about.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll just ask Mr. Klockow to hold on one second. Sir, please come up to the mic, let us know who you are, where you live, and your question.
Paul Simpson, 52 Island Road. So thank you for answering the interest rates question, because that's one that I had as well. I live, full disclosure, I live next to Cassidy Field, so in previous forums, such as the select board meeting, I did just raise a couple of issues to think about with the field. One is water levels. So I do know that there were tests that were done and that the tests kind of like passed the requirements. Mr. Clark could probably speak to this as well. I was there the day that they conducted those tests, and this has been an extremely dry season, and not just in the springtime, but also during the winter. So the water levels have been very low, and anybody who's familiar with that field knows that for several months during the year, the water levels are very high. I mean, it's almost like a swamp. You know, we can only use our backyard, not the whole year, because sometimes it's so moist. So that's kind of one thing to think about. Another is there any DEP issues with this property? You say no, so you're answering my question. Thank you. And the third was wildlife. So this field, I know it's a big field, but it has been increasingly used over the years by deer, fox, geese, you know, you name it, coyotes. And that population's been increasing. This is just my theory, because of some of the other development that's been going on in the town, so they've been gravitating to that area. There's actually a family of deer that was bedded down there for the winter. So, you know, these are just things that I think should be thought about, you know, in relation to the field. And then I do have one cost question too. Thinking about the potential impact for the infrastructure and water and sewer. There's a sewer pump station that's currently located on an island in Timberline that services the local area. So I have a 3-part question. One is, if this construction takes place, will that pump station have to be, you know, rebuilt or replaced? If the answer is yes, do we know what the cost of that would be? And then my 3rd part of this is that factored into the $16 million estimate that we currently have? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McKay or Mr. Klockow, would either of you like to take a?
Mr. McKay, I think, would be appropriate.
Thank you,
So now I
Kathy.
get up and say,
You're welcome.
DPW director. That question's been posed through many, many meetings, and I'm finally glad that I can finally answer that question. About 15 years ago, we did a study on our sewer capital improvement projects. And one of them was that one of many, the lift station at Island Road, it needed to be replaced because of its age, its size, the pumps, and everything else. And one of the major concerns was it was built for its capacity of what the homes that are there. It was never figured in the line. There is a sewer line that comes off of Island Road that does service this project. When it was purchased years ago, it was purchased for municipal use. We all know whatever story was, what, it was gonna be a police station, fire station, whatever it was gonna be used, a school or whatever. So I think to answer Paul's question, when, in any project, when the school, when this building's being renovated, when any new use for any property is done, whether it's town, private, or whatever, there's a study that needs to be done for that. So this property will have to submit a water and sewer, water permit extension and a sewer extension permit to the select board. They're the Water and Sewer Commission. We'll take that and we will send it out to our peer review engineer, and they will have to supply to us the flows, what the building is gonna, actually flow into the station. That hasn't been done. We don't know what the flow of the building is. We don't know how many bathrooms. We don't know how the size of the kitchen. I don't think any of that's been designed yet. And lastly, no, we don't, I don't believe it is part of the $16 million, but Mr. Clarko can answer that when he comes up, part of the building cost. We've replaced Water Street Station, and that was between $750 to $800-something thousand, and that was 4 years ago. This is a much smaller type station. It would be on the lines of something of Dover Road, the Dover Road lift station. And that was, we raised it up out of the floodplain, and that was at almost $300-something thousand. We do have there is a need for that station to be replaced, whether it be done by a developer or the town. The ratepayers will have to replace that station in the very near future with all the new construction that's going on that end of town. So until we get an exact plan, we don't know what the cost would be or if it would have to be replaced. But it is on our capital list of being replaced now. It's definitely on that list because of its age and the pumps that have been there. They're original to the, I think we maybe changed one of them. And I don't know the year it was installed, but I'm sure it was
1988.
1988.
Okay.
Kathy's lived there since then.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, quick, if I could, do we know the current capacity of that plant? Is it at 80% capacity?
I'm going to just say we move on. We're not going to get into some sewer design analysis tonight, but they're all, that is a legitimate concern and question. I think we've answered it. Okay. Any last questions for Abacus or Council on Aging before we move on? Mr. Stedman.
I have a question that I guess is directed more at Mr. Kaczynski. The Cassidy Farm was acquired in 1999. It's approximately 36 acres. 19 acres have conservation restrictions, which leaves, pardon me, the remaining 17 acres are unrestricted, although a portion was designated as a wetland replication area for some construction of the DPW project. And there are some undelineated wetlands, as was mentioned earlier. Thus, there's probably between 10 and 12 acres that are usable where the senior center is proposed. They're saying it would be 2 acres, but that probably doesn't include all the roads and parking and so forth. I know that you weren't here in 1999, but since you've been the town administrator, are you aware of any analysis or discussions regarding higher value uses of the Cassidy Farm?
Mr. Kaczynski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have not had any information made available to me about any such study or review of that property since I've been here. So I cannot answer in the affirmative to that. We're not aware of any other study that's been done. And maybe people in the room that have been here a lot longer than I have that could answer that, but
Thank you.
I'm not aware of any. Thank you.
Anybody else have any background or information on the question?
I will make one comment if I might.
Go ahead.
In the presentations that were made that I had a copy of, this might answer some of the questions. Even though this was for a 15,000 square foot building, the estimate for the cost of construction was 11.7 million. And then the total of 16 million included all those other unknowns, such as A&E fields, land survey, third-party testing of soils, structure, concrete, so forth and so on. So that there was money above that, and it comes out to 1,000 square feet, $1,000 per square foot in what they're proposing. I can't put that in context, but I thought that was information that was public, so I thought I'd share it.
Okay, thank you very much. Gentleman in
Sorry,
the
Miss-
black parka. Okay, okay.
Could
All
I,
right.
Mr. Chair, could I just find out what information, where did you get, I'm just,
It was in part of the presentations that were made over the summer.
okay. At the forums?
Yes.
Because I was there, I don't remember getting anything. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I didn't
Okay,
make it up.
We're going to move on
No.
our agenda. Mr. Klockow. We invited Mr. Klockow because we wanted to discuss with him, essentially the Permanent Building Committee's opinion on the options that have been put forth
I don't think they give
for the senior
opinions.
center.
Thank you. Good evening. Couple of points I would make as chairman of the Permanent Building Committee. I think what I've heard tonight, what I've heard through all the focus groups, everybody that we've talked to, is that the current facility is inadequate. There's no question that something needs to be done. And the question is, what is that? And that's what we've heard throughout all of our interactions with the community. The project, Mr. Berube, you asked whether or not the 15,000 square feet is essentially the same, the plan is the same at this building or at Cassidy Farm, and you're right, it is. And the reason why it is because what drove the square footage and what drives the design is how the people are going to use the building. And so the use is going to be the same, whether or not it's here or at Cassidy. The difference here is that it's a two-story building attached to a 100-year-old building with excavations and other work that would need to be done in order to integrate it into this facility, or a one-story slab-on-grade building that would deal with all the water issues that everybody seems to be concerned about. And those tests were done long before it got really hot this summer. But I understand that that's a concern, but the type of construction is a one-story slab-on-grade building. But what's in it is essentially a kitchen, a dining area that would be adequate for the needs of the senior center in order to provide the kinds of functions that they currently do, and 3 function rooms, including an exercise room. And that's what we would have here. Now, you could take out one of those function rooms, they're about 1,000 square feet, and at $1,000 per square foot, you can figure out what the cost would be. So even if we try to reduce the footage in order to make it more financially palatable to the people in town, the difference is insignificant in relation to the total cost of the project. So how this Council on Aging needs to use the building for the 15,000 square feet determines the cost. And when you look at the capital investment, when you're looking at financing a project over 30 years, you have to decide what it is that you're going to build. And do you build part of it today and part of it 10 years from now? And what's the cost going to be overall? What's the most financially responsible way to proceed? Well, I can tell you, having been in this position for 25 years, the cheapest, most cost-effective solution is to build it today, not to build it in stages, not to do it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, because those costs are going to change. And so, and people will then ask all of us at that point, if you needed something, 5 or 10 years from now, why didn't you ask us then? Hindsight will always be working to our disadvantage, and people will say, why didn't you do it then? And that's why we're here with a 15,000 square foot facility, asking for it to be capitalized over 30 years. So let me talk about that just a little bit. 30-year note, 4.25%. The town would borrow the funds just like you do for your home. There would be a temporary construction loan. Our cost estimates are predicated on, we'd have to design, assuming that we got the approval from both town meeting and an override vote, construction we would anticipate would start about a year from today, fall of 2023. 16-month construction period is what we would project. We would not be in a position to permanently finance this project until 2024, possibly 2025. So a lot could change, and we all are really trying to predict the future here. If we had a crystal ball, we could maybe be a little better at it. But I can tell you that all of our concerns about interest rates and the economy and supply chain, all of those kinds of things, certainly have been on the mind of the Permanent Building Committee and are baked into these numbers. And you're absolutely right about the numbers, and I want to just hit on that just a moment. But who knows what the interest rate is going to be in 2024 or 2025? We would hope that it's not on the same trajectory that it is today. So again, we're kind of trying to predict the future. So let me go to just the cost. You're absolutely right. The actual construction cost is $11,717,442. That's a number that we got our professional construction cost estimator to provide to us.
I've got that in front of me.
That number was actually increased by $1.2 million after we went through line by line with all their first iteration to make sure that they had everything. So we were very conservative to make sure that what they were looking at was included. To that number, Abacus advised us that we needed to gross up that number for architectural and engineering fees, project management fees, specific engineering, furniture fixtures in order to fit out the building. Everything that we would need would be all in. They give us three options: 30% markup over that $11.7 million, 33 or 35. The 35% number came out to $15.8 million. We rounded it up to 16 to make sure that we took the most conservative approach to make sure that we weren't coming back to you and saying, we don't have enough money to build this building. We've taken an extremely conservative financial approach to building this building. And that's what we have in front of you, because you're going to fund it for 30 years. We want to make sure that the life of the building will last much longer than 50 years, and that's how the town gets the value out of their investment. And we're investing in the future of this town. That's what this is all about. I'm very confident that the Council on Aging will be able to use every inch of the building. Everything that we have done in this town, whether or not it's this building, is fully utilized. Library, fully utilized. Police fire stations, fully utilized. The Clyde Brown School, fully utilized. I expect this will be no different. And so that's the background that this committee with the Council on Aging developed the proposal that's in front of you. And so I guess the last thing that I would say to you is we asked the town chief financial officer to give us an opinion about whether or not 16 million of borrowing would somehow affect the bonding, the rating of the town, and the answer came back is that it would have no effect whatsoever. So the town is in a position to borrow the funds. And so I understand that we all have our own personal opinions about whether or not this project ought to go forward or not. But as a finance committee, I think from a fiduciary point of view, it's been well thought out, it's been fully vetted, it is a sound project, and I think it warrants the finance committee's approval.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Klockow, what's the date on that estimate? When was it dated, or when was that process completed where we marked up, 35% plus?
that was
What year?
this year, April or May of this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's on the website. It's on the Council of Aging website.
Understand. Thank you.
I do have one point I want to make, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Quickly?
Yes. You talked about 15,000 square feet, and that's what's in the cost study. The presentation that Mr. Irwin just presented said 16,000 square feet. I think those two numbers need to be the same before we go to the town.
There may be somewhat of a difference, and it may be corridors or back of the house kind of space. I understand your point, and we can make sure that we're specific about it, but I would say to you, it's not material.
Okay.
Mr. Underhill?
Mr. Clacco, I would, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would ask, you have design and pricing contingency. I'm referencing this breakout. And then we have the development costs where there's construction contingency.
We have a design contingency, 12%.
Right.
We have about a 5% owner's contingency in that 35% additional.
Understood. I just think a cost summary with at least the contingencies broken out would be very helpful to the committee to be aware of cost versus anticipated contingencies.
Sure. And just for your information tonight, the construction estimator calculated a 7.4% cost escalation from the time of their estimate to the beginning of construction.
Thank you.
So we've tried to cover all of those bases, and again, and do it in a most conservative way possible.
I have a quick question,
Go ahead,
Mr. Chair.
Ms. McGinnis.
What Mr. Stedman was referring to, does that document include if the ground was contaminated to clean that up?
The study that was made was primarily focused on groundwater. There were 3 contaminants that you would expect in an agricultural setting that were investigated for and were all non-detects. One was arsenic. I don't know, and I don't recall what the other 2 were.
So through the chair, are you confident that there wouldn't be any, all of a sudden, an additional override as was for the police station or the settlement that's now being made with the contaminants from the library? So you're all, there's funds in here to take care of any further contamination that would be found?
No, there is not.
Oh,
No,
okay.
there is not.
Okay.
And nor would we expect that there would be any, based on the usage of this property as a farm for its known existence.
Over 100 years. Also, is the document that Mr. Stedman was referring to, Mr. Chair, I'd like to know, does that include the new pump station?
It does not. The new pump station was a pre-existing condition, unknown to the committee when it provided its cost estimate. That is a pre-existing condition. And I would ask the committee whether or not funding for a sewer station would not come from the Sewer Enterprise Fund.
So you're
Why would that be part of this project?
Okay.
I'd like to comment on it, Mr. Chair, if I might.
I don't think we need to.
I'd like to say that
Quickly, you have 60 seconds.
Well, now I have 50 because of your comment.
Actually, 55.
May I? The existing pumping station is fine for what's there now. I don't think it's fair for either this finance committee or the voters to expect a water enterprise and sewer enterprise to absorb a sewer station, a new sewer station for this project. Whatever you're putting in there, whatever the Council on Aging is putting in, you should be accommodating everything that's needed that's new. And that's my view of it. I'd rather see $1 million added to this so that it's in there, rather than something else the ratepayers have to pay for, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any last questions? Mr. Klockow, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Moving right along, Mr. McKay. We are about 30 minutes behind schedule. That's okay. we just gotta, what's that?
Famous last words.
Hopefully, everybody stays, because this is just as much effective costs than what we just talked about. I'd just like to state one thing, that the DPW building is also functioning and up to speed also, as one of those projects.
Mr. McKay, please pull that mic right up close.
There we go.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Good presentations.
Mr. Chair, can we remind the people in the audience to take conversations outside?
Nobody can hear them, they're not on mic.
Yes, you can.
Mr. McKay,
Thank
floor
you.
is yours.
Thank you. So we'll start right down the list. On the capital planning aspects, we have.
Mr. McKay, the floor is yours.
Ask them to take it outside?
I think they'll get the point.
So on the capital planning, we have a DPW pickup truck and a compressor. Both of them are in need of replacement, and those costs are, I'm sure the town administrator will get into them. The first item is a lead line service inventory replacement plan. So I did happen to watch a meeting last week, and there was much discussion about that, and that was approved at the May town meeting. This article and one other article that we're going to discuss tonight were presented to the capital planning committee, and it was decided that because they're reoccurring expenses, that they should be removed from the capital planning aspects of it. Meeting with the finance director and the town administrator, we have found funds that, for closing out other projects that have already been gone through their life cycle, and there's been money left over. So we're going to use both funds to close out articles, and I'm sure the finance director will point them out to you when she does her presentation. And one of them is that. The lead service line, you know what, let's go back on that. I apologize, I'm ahead of myself. The lead service line, we did receive the grant of $139,000 for it. And part of it is that the state is making us take a grant. It's a federal grant, so the state is making us take a 2% loan. So we will have to pay $4,000 of the $139,000, and I guess I'd take, paying $4,000 on that $139 any day.
Yeah.
So it will be fully reimbursed. We did not bring it to town meeting. The treasurer collector does not have the authority to go out and borrow funds without a town meeting vote. And that's the only reason why this is being repurposed or an article now, so that she can do that. The engineering services for infiltration and inflow, if you look down, I believe that's Article 17, so you can cross that off your list. That is one that was, we're taking those funds, it was taken out of the enterprise fund sewer budget. And that's the ones that we found that there was monies available in the sewer budget from past projects to combine them, and we're going to be able to pay for that. And that money will be redacted from the present budget, and these monies will be used for that. But we need a town meeting vote to do that, to rescind the previous articles. And I believe there's a list of them that will be presented to you later. Any questions on those two? So
I want to try to clarify, because I certainly was privy to the discussion at Capital Planning Committee, and you're jumping around a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that everybody understands. So on the lead water service lines, when I'm done, I want you to correct or clarify what I'm about to say. This was voted on, similar funds were appropriated during Springtown meeting. And as it turns out, they're not necessarily needed as they were executed at Springtown meeting. Rather, a loan needs to be taken because the grant requires the town to pay for it up front, and then it will be reimbursed with the federal dollars or the state dollars. So the town will borrow at a rate of 2%. It'll cost us $4,000 to do it, but we'll recoup $139,000 from the state. So it's a little bit backwards, where we'll borrow up front, pay for it, provided that town meeting approves it, and then recoup the dollars from the grant.
So the only difference with that, we do not have to use the $139,000. They will reimburse us as we submit for payments.
Okay, so does the note actually ever get paid, or who does it get paid by?
The Mass DEP,
Okay.
Clean Water Trust, I believe
Okay.
it's under the,
And then, as you described, the I&I study, again, that was part of the budget, separate issue than the lead survey.
Correct.
I&I was part of the budget. There are some unexpended funds within the enterprise that can be recaptured. There's an article that, we've done this before in numerous other projects, both operating budget, DPW, other town expenses. And in this case, the enterprise has similar projects that have money left over. Those will get consolidated and will pay for this year's I&I. Ms. Johnston,
So I think,
please step to the mic.
so I think there's just a little bit of confusion when it comes to the grant for the two projects that Mr. McKay is talking about. So on the lead line
Yep.
for the $139,000, it's a zero principal grant. So therefore, we have to take a loan for it. And then we will be reimbursed the $139, that will be paid off. We have to reduce his budget by the $139 because we're taking a loan. So therefore, we don't need it. So that's part of the article. The next thing is also for the asset management piece
One
of it.
second,
Yeah, we haven't got
would
to
you
the
clarify, when you say reduce his budget, you mean reduce the sewer enterprise budget, operating budget?
Right.
Okay.
So we reduced the sewer enterprise budget for fiscal 2023 by the $139,000.
So you're not paying twice for the same thing on the books?
Exactly. So, but we do need to get the authorization to take the loan.
Okay.
The same thing is happening for the asset management piece of it. That's a $250,000 project. Of that, only $150,000 will be a zero principal loan. So we will need to take a $150,000 loan. We'll take that from the sewer enterprise. The other $100,000 will be paid for as an article from the stormwater enterprise. So those are the two pieces that I wanted to just clarify, so that you understand it. It is a grant, but in order to get the grant, we have to take a loan because it's a zero principal grant for those two items from the Clean Water Trust. The other item, he did speak correctly on that. For the I&I study, we do have completed capital projects in the sewer enterprise that have remaining balances that we can transfer over to this new project. But we will need a vote at town meeting for that. So no additional monies will have to come out. We just need a vote to close out those other completed projects and move the funds over to the new project.
Excellent.
Okay?
Any questions on
So
that,
on
those
both-
particular issues?
But both of those, the money that's coming out of the budget is going back into the reserve funds for both water and sewer.
Well,
They're
in
not-
water and sewer, it's just that you're not going to be
Right,
using that
right.
money for your budget,
Right.
so it will come out of we won't
But it
need
goes back to
as much
return
in
earnings.
revenues.
Return earnings.
So,
So they're
Clear
not
as mud.
They're not disappearing.
Okay.
I understand. I understand.
so anyway, those two line items will be reduced in the budgets for those enterprises, based on the vote. We need the vote.
Okay. Any questions, follow-ups on those?
I hope that the language gets straightened out a little bit, so it's a little.
Well, that's our job, right? We'll be doing that.
Yeah, so it's a
And
little
we'll have
clearer.
access to Mr. McKay and Ms. Johnston.
So in the motion,
It will be
it will be,
correct.
it will be very clear in the motion.
And in the discussion.
article,
And in the
I believe
article.
In the article that you currently have in front of you, I believe that had been rewritten
Okay.
to state that it would be
It's still
reducing
confusing
the
to me.
budget.
So hopefully you'll get it, and I'll help you write it. And we'll be all set. We'll be all set.
Okay.
Okay, so Article number 14, the water Management Act permit and that support, and that's for $56,000 and change. I did send you a copy of exactly what that is entailed and what that means. It's a presentation from Kleinfelder. It's our water permit. It's what we can discharge every single day. And it comes down to, there's many changes in that draft permit, and I encourage everybody to read it. I believe it's on the website. I encourage every Millis resident to read it. It's going to affect everybody, every one of us Millis residents, on how we water our lawns and what we do.
Can you give us the executive summary of
The three
these,
things that concern me
15
are.
pages?
Yeah, so
Ish.
the concern, one of the largest concern is the watering ban aspect of it. If, we all know what we just went through this past year, that's our water permit. That's how we're gonna go forward from now on with this water permit. That, before we'd be able to, we would put our water ban in place on May 30th, and it would go through September 30th, or May 1st through September 30th. And in that, we could pretty much water anytime we wanted, as long as it was not between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Now we're down to that, right off the bat, once in that time frame, we're gonna get out to 2 days a week, odd, even type situation. And then, as you saw, as the drought goes further and further, we get down to, no irrigation systems, none. You go down to your handheld hoses, and then to what we were last week, no watering whatsoever. That means no power washing, you can't wash your cars out and everything else. So that's one thing I would encourage everybody to adhere to, because it's gonna, that's definitely gonna be part of it.
Will the 2 days per week include hours restrictions
It
as
would
well?
be also between 9 and 5. You can't water between 9 and 5. And it would be an odd, even type basis.
And
So
will that also affect businesses, or is it just residential?
That's what we can debate. And a lot of recreational areas may not have to be part of that, but we have to work that out through this process.
Thank you.
With the DEP. The next concern is they're actually taking our capacity of what we can pump every single day. And they're taking like almost 12 million, MGs. They want to lower that because of our consumption record for the past so many years. We're going to fight that because that's. And then thirdly, right now we have the ability to sell water to the town of Franklin. They were interested, when wells 5 and 6 were built, wells 5 and 6 are off of Norfolk Road. We were able, when it was built, it was with the idea that we could sell water to the town of Franklin and Franklin only. But let's make the record straight. There's not 1 gallon of water goes out of Millis being sold to anybody. No one gets it. The trucks that you see coming out of Ann and Hope, it's theirs. It's their well, it's not ours. So they have their own water permit, and they can sell it as, and they have restrictions too, but they want to take that away. And we will dispute that also.
I'm sorry, who is they?
The Mass DEP, I'm sorry. Mass DEP is, they regulate our water permit for just, pumping what comes out of the ground.
So all of this is because of their requests,
So
or?
the last permit we actually had was in 2010, and they're supposed to redo it every 4 years. We've had some extensions off of the 2010 permit. This is one that is going to change everything drastically for the town of Millis.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on one second.
If it
you
goes
would.
through? Or is it going to, it's,
A good part of it will go through, yes. I mean, we have different things that we will, that's why Kleinfeld is going to represent us in doing that.
Mr. McKay, would you
Yes.
just clarify for me, please? The second item that you mentioned was a restriction on pumping somewhere in the neighborhood of less than 12 million gallons a
Yep.
day. What was the third restriction?
Is the selling of water to
Selling.
the town of Franklin.
Okay, Mr. Underhill.
Mr. McKay,
Yes.
what would happen if this was rejected at town meeting? What are the consequences to the town?
If Kleinfelder we couldn't use the funds, we would go back to the select board and ask them to, as water and sewer commissioners, to appropriate the funds don't know how that would legally go,
Yeah.
but that's what I would do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions for Mr. McKay on the permit, water permit?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Mr. Duffy, yes, you may.
Jim Duffy, Exchange Street, Millis. Mr. McKay, is that published anywhere, the water permit?
Yes, it's on the, this website, it's on the
Finance.
Finance
But
Committee
it's not
website.
nowhere else, it's not in the DPW, or it's only on the finance, so I want to link to it,
Yeah.
so I can.
So the reason for that is we're actually doing things out of order. This has not been presented to the select board yet. I'm actually going to the finance committee before I've actually presented any of these articles to the select board. There will be I believe there was a presentation on this, maybe was it at the last select board?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was discussed, but the actual permit is on the finance committee's website.
Just like the record reflect, I take exception to that. You're not out of order. You don't have to go to them first.
Yeah, I like that.
You're doing just fine.
We know where the power
Sounds
is.
good to me. While I'm here, that's
So
my agree.
my concern is public awareness
Yep.
of what this may mean to the town, to the citizens, so that it's not a surprise, right, sooner rather than later.
Thank you. So article number, and Carol just gave the funding source of what the asset management for sewer and stormwater. We've gone through 3 phases of these. We've already done water. There was one for stormwater, but this is actually getting into the water, the sewer and stormwater infrastructure, pipes in the ground. There's gonna be an inventory, and there'll be mapping done for it, and this is a grant.
This is Article 17 you're talking about?
16.
Sorry, thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
And there is in-kind services that will come up out of the I believe, 125,000 that we have to come up with. 89,000 will come out of the 2 budgets. After all the grants have been fully funded, there's 17,000 of man-hours that the DPW have to put in-kind services, and then 85, so it'll be split in water and sewer. But to borrow it, we do, like Carol stated, we have to fund the whole project. This is not like the other one.
Okay.
Anything on that? Okay. Now the PFAS, quickly with the update on PFAS. The wells 3 through 6. And what this says is preliminary design for PFAS treatment plant for well number 3, and that's article number 15. I know there was a lot of question. If everyone, in FY '22, when we actually funded the actual construction of the final design of wells 1 and 2, town meeting also appropriated $255,600 for a study on the rest of the 4 wells that we have. Each one of the wells, every one of our wells has some sort of PFAS in them at different times. Well number 3 is the highest, and I think you had a question, Mr. Chair, about, what is the...
Yeah, I don't follow the testing
Nope,
certainly
and I
during the
don't blame
summer.
you.
I know you do, though.
But I can ask everybody, wells number 3, well 3 is tested monthly, the other ones are tested quarterly. The report, you have it in your packet. It's up to date, and it's published monthly. We update it. It's a little more than what is necessary, but I want everybody to know what's out there. So that's on the DPW website. The EPA and the Mass DEP, they're going to add 29 new other chemicals to PFAS. 29 more, and there'll be more after that. Some of them will be regulated.
Welcome to Massachusetts, Mr. Stedman.
Some will be either in that regulation, but we will be testing within the next year or 2 for 29 more contaminants. So when we do a vial, we'll have to test for 29 more. Right now, none of them will be in in the PFAS 6. They're not going to change PFAS 6 yet, but I can see that in, years to come, that they will change that. The idea of when this was presented, both well 1 and 2 construction of the PFAS plant and the study for the rest of the PFAS throughout the system, we actually had a committee that actually sat and we talked about this every meeting. PFAS was our #1 priority that we talked about at the beginning of every single meeting. It was direction of, with presentations, what would be, if we decided to build another plant, what would be that well? Well number 4, that's up on South End Pond, it was decided not to do that because it has a manganese problem already, a severe manganese problem that we can regulate without this type of treatment. So we eliminated that. So if we built a PFAS plant up there, and I actually think it's got the lowest PFAS numbers on the report, we would have to build a treatment for manganese. Wells 5 and 6, it will still be, if you look at the permit, it will still be regulated on the 13 cc's, 13 feet, whatever, at the Medway Bridge. And we will still have restrictions on when we can use it. And for several, if you go by history, it's off for the summer. It's off from June through maybe December sometimes because of the river levels. So we eliminated that, even though that was the newest one. Well, number 3.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I know.
Well
Go.
4 has a manganese problem, meaning it's offline for that same
No, it's
problem?
on. No, it's still on. We can treat it. We definitely, we can still treat it with lower levels of chemicals that we put into the system.
Okay, thank you.
But the type of treatment that we're using at well number 2, and which is designed, it would raise the manganese level up higher.
Thank you.
So well number 3 being the second highest, and it fluctuates between, this year alone, it's gone from 13.1 up to 16.7. And 20 is the threshold. When you hit that 20 threshold, you can, you go from 3 consecutive months. If you keep every month, if it goes over, then you have to take the well offline. So if next month, if we had well number 3 go over 20 parts per trillion, think about it, you would, for 3 consecutive months, we'd have to take it offline, and we wouldn't be able to use it. Well number 3 has been offline this summer because of parts. We run it once a day. There's a chemical blockage as it comes out of the treatment plant and goes under the ground, and we're just waiting, like everybody, waiting for parts. So we've been running the entire water system on either well number 5 or number 6, because we don't run the 2 of them together, and well number 4.
You're not running number 3 at all?
When we run it once a day to keep it, in case we have to turn it on, in that way it keeps it in testing mode and stuff like that. So we do run it once a day. We pump through, tens of thousands of gallons to keep it within the DEP rights that we can actually turn it back on if we needed to. So with that committee, it was decided that it would be 3. So that's how we moved forward and narrowed it down to well number 3. What this is not, and Kirsten will be presenting this to the select board not this Monday, the following Monday. This is just for assessment of these existing conditions for well number 3, if it fits there. They'll do test borings to see if that land is contaminated or if it can handle the station itself. This is not a full design. I do believe that we can use, if we choose to use the same type of treatment, and that this study will show us that, we will be able to use the same design that's at wells 1 and 2. So there won't have to be a full-flown fledged design done for this.
Smaller
plant.
capacity though, right?
Yes, it would definitely be half of it because you only got one well, yes.
Mr. McKay, if you if Article 15 is funded, that would be a preliminary design and study, then likely, if warranted and if voter approved, the next logical step would be funding for a full-on treatment system, which would include, it would be design build, likely all in one article.
Yes.
Okay. You had mentioned that the DEP has added 29 chemicals to the PFAS, lists.
Yep.
Does the treatment system being constructed at Wells 1 and 2 abate any of those new chemicals?
Yes, so the treatment plant that it will, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's to remove all PFASs. There's
Okay.
hundreds of them. I mean, it's,
Mr. Gatto?
So I was at a presentation at the library.
Yes, yeah, thanks, thank you.
I was at a presentation over the summer at the library, and they were talking about this issue, and about how they expected the 20 parts per trillion to be lowered. Is this study going to take into consideration the idea that we're going to need to catch up to that?
so, yes, I mean, the treatment plant that we're building, it's gonna be zero, for that to be. That's another regulation that is being floated around. It's going through state review and comment period, along with the 29 ones that they want to add. They may lower that from 20 down to, who knows what it could be. But they are looking at lowering the threshold from 20 down to a lower number for the PFAS 6 that we already treat.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Arner?
Mr. McKay, just off the top of your head, do you remember how much this town paid in total for the PFAS filtration for Wells 1 and 2?
So, right now, I can give you just a quick update with the treatment plant itself. We did borrow $5.5 million for that treatment plant. We're up to, within budget. We've had two very small little change orders that I think was like $12,000 for the both of them. We're on time with the plant being built. There's no major, holdup of equipment. The structure of the building, the tanks, we believe the tanks will be delivered in November, sometime in November, which is good. If you drive down there, if you want to take a look, it's out in the back. They've got it looks like a beautiful, huge swimming pool. It would have been great for that. The building's big. It's bigger than what I thought it was going to be, but, so budget-wise, $5.5 million, and out of that, I believe there's a there's a contingency of $400-something thousand that we've only used $12,000 of that contingency.
Thank you.
Mr. McKay, do you anticipate operating cost increases once that plant comes online?
Chemical-wise, in the plant, the system would have to be flushed out every 2 years. That means the digesters will have to be washed out. So there will be and it goes through the sewer system, so there will be, we'll meter that, and the water system will pay the sewer system for that. Treatment-wise, it would be minimal. Manpower, our operators all have the proper license to do it, so there'll be no staffing increases for it.
So there's no collection and disposal of hazardous materials? It just gets flushed and goes downstream?
Isn't that it? It's nothing to laugh at. It's absolutely nothing to laugh at. You're 100% correct. So we're taking PFAS, we're removing it from the water system, and what are we doing? We're dumping it right into the sewer system, and it's going right out back into the child's river.
Concentrated, yeah.
Oh my God. It's ludicrous.
Which was one of the points that one of our guests last spring made, pretty adamantly, and, so it's no epiphany by me personally.
Nope.
Okay. All right. Any more questions?
I do, Mr. Chair. I just want to make certain that a few years ago, when we figured out that perhaps all the wells may need this, there was discussion about a central, and we would pipe everything from the 6 wells to this central place, and it was truly cost prohibitive. And I'm wondering if it still will be. It will be, because
It
you're,
is.
yeah.
Yeah,
So people, because I've heard that before,
Yeah.
well, why don't they just all, and then another thing, that Mr. McKay said, the 20 parts is a Commonwealth law. The feds are, do they even have anything? It was 70.
The
So-
EPA regulation is 70.
Is 70.
That's what you mean.
Stark difference.
So I do encourage the select board, we have to populate the enterprise committee. It has to be done. All this stuff is, and there's more regulations come every day from the, whether it's sewer, whether it's water, whether it's stormwater. Regulations come every single day, and they're changing them. Stormwater regulations are being changed, that it's, the lead line, that's gonna dwarf any of this PFAS stuff. The cost of what it's gonna cost for us to change the little knuckle in every house connection in Millis is gonna be, it's gonna be astonishing, the cost of what these regulations are gonna cost the ratepayer.
Thanks for all the good news.
Thanks.
Okay.
And the only good news I do have in leaving.
We'll take it.
Quickly, is I would hope I can come back before town meeting and let's discuss, I don't know what the final paving costs were. I believe they did come in under budget, so I do think that we'll have a lot of discussions on what we can, what, are we gonna design sidewalks? Are we gonna, for next May meeting? I do believe we'll have funding, but that's my recommendation to the select board,
So,
and to the town administrator, not, I
less-
don't want to get carried away with it.
Less the striping, which I see, is underway and ongoing. Were all the projects executed thus far for which you had funds appropriated?
Yes.
Okay.
So we did complete the stretch on 109, the Village Street, Pleasant Street.
Pleasant Street.
Exchange Street, the section on Exchange Street. And of course, once we started, it decided to rain. It's, it didn't rain all year long, and Millis decided to.
Well, you could start in July.
Okay, yeah. Well, I
don't
can't,
have the
because I
money.
don't have the funding for it.
Sure you do. Anyway, okay.
Yeah. So I'd like to come back and, hopefully we'll have better figures on that, and.
Great.
Thank you very much.
You also had, you had questions on Hickory Hills, maybe I can.
Oh, the acceptance of the road.
Yes.
They are definitely moving forward with that.
Article 19, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, so I see that going, most of it's on the select board approval, because it's as-built plans of the subdivision, the cleaning of catch basins, which have been done, the filming of the sewer, the drainage system, the sewer system's already been televised. We did a walkthrough, we're actually exercising every gate, every house gate, fire gate, to make sure that they're all operational before we take it over. And the developer's been very, online with it, so I do definitely see that, we will recommend that to the select board for.
How's the
for
roads?
acceptance.
The
The roads
three
are,
roads?
they're good. I mean, they're not excellent because they've been there for,
That's what I'm saying.
before approval. There's nothing there that we would not accept it over.
Any lead unions at the residential
No.
connections?
No.
Not anymore.
Approved.
Maybe at your house.
Thank you.
Those are the three roads you're speaking of, the approval of the three roads?
It's,
Yeah,
yeah, all
Pearl
three of
Street,
them.
Deborah Lane, and
Deborah,
Teresa
Deborah,
Drive. Yeah.
All of his kids.
And
Okay.
then- Yep, thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kaczynski. By exception, would you go over the warrant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to go through the updated warrant. I know you're here a little later than you expected, so I will.
No, we're not later than I expected.
All right, then forecast it on the agenda.
Well, I am.
So I will certainly try to keep this brief. So you should have received the updated draft fall annual town meeting warrant, which now contains a total of 27 articles. The select board at their meeting this past Monday removed one article and added 5. They also changed the order of many of the articles, so I will let you review that and determine those changes. So just to quickly go through the items to highlight the additions and subtractions. The article having to do with the floodplain bylaw, the FEMA, That, we've determined that that can be put off for a later meeting, and some more work is needed on that, so the select board has voted to remove that item. They have added 5 items, 4 of which Mr. McKay just went through and reviewed with the committee. The other item is Article 5, repairs to Majors Field. This was a request made to the select board at their meeting Monday on, from the Millis Youth Baseball to do some repairs to, I think primarily the infield area of Majors Field that has suffered greatly with the drought and lack of ability to water. I know there was quite a bit of discussion on that at the selectmen's meeting on Monday.
In the interest of full disclosure, I serve on the Millis Youth Baseball Board. I presented this to the select board on Monday, and I will be, not that I could possibly benefit from this personally, but I will recuse myself from voting or taking that article, but I'm happy to either give the presentation or present information, answer questions along the way. But just to let everybody know, I was the one that presented that to the select board on Monday.
Also, just to note that many of the articles did not have the actual numbers inserted. Now, most of those numbers have been inserted into the warrant. Right now, I'm in the process, and I'll be working with the finance director on assembling the full list of motions for the articles, so I anticipate you'll have those at your next meeting. So you'll see all the details, and I know it was pointed out earlier that a few of the articles, as written, leave some details out, but the motions will certainly cover those details, insofar as funding sources and other important details. So they can be highlighted in your finance committee flyer that you send out. The language for the petition articles has been added. You'll see that in the warrant. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to turn it back to you to kind of highlight any specific areas you'd like me to address in the warrant.
I don't have any specific questions right now. Anybody have any questions? Ms. Garzon?
So this new Article 5, was that not included in the capital planning recommendations because it's kind of a more emergent need that has
Yes,
arisen?
it just came to the knowledge of myself and the board within the last week. I think the select board felt it was a matter of more just extraordinary maintenance that was time sensitive than a major capital item.
Okay.
So I think that was the viewpoint of the board.
There's no way to do that and not have it on the warrant? Just somehow get it through, but
We don't.
yeah, every warrant takes 10 minutes.
I know, we don't
So-
have 20,000 really lying around in any budget that could be used for that.
The good news is that there's not an extra $20,000 in an operating budget account somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
Right, that would potentially be a bad thing, but that there's extra money around? No, not as a taxpayer, I wouldn't think so. The
Some
fact that-
larger communities do have accounts that allow some flexibility for items that come up during the year. We don't have a lot of funds for that.
Wow. I also think it depends on who you ask, which department you ask.
And it would depend how much of an emergency it was. Certainly, if we did that, something else would have to give way for that to happen. And if the town decided not to fund, back funded that expense item, that could be very problematic for that
I can tell you that
department.
Millis Youth Baseball's strategy to get this approved is to march 150 kids in their uniforms
Oh, no,
up front in the town meeting.
Are they selling candy
and
bars, too?
Somebody will make the pitch.
I have no problem with the $20,000. I
shouldn't
just look
take-
at this,
It should
27
be in
articles.
something.
27
Should be
articles,
set aside
10
already.
minutes each. And
I
a lot
hope
of
to
them
get
are
it
going to be a
done in
lot more than
about
that.
2
We're
minutes
looking at a
flat.
4-hour meeting.
Understand.
So we're probably looking at a 5-6 hour meeting.
So, Mr.
And I
Chair,
also
are
have
you
a concern with all the
presenting this
petitions at
article
the
to our
end.
board, or?
No.
No?
The only ones
No,
that
I
are going to be
don't-
left
I'm-
are the ones
I have
that
questions
signed
on
the
the-
petitions.
I'll ask the town meeting.
I will answer questions here for whoever it does get assigned to, but I'm stepping away from it. I don't want to influence the committee. Again, it's not for personal purposes, but, you know, I'm going to vote, or actually, excuse me, I'm not going to vote. I will help you decide how the committee wants to vote on this.
Mr. Chair, how does this compare to other sports facilities and fields? Why the baseball field needs $20,000 versus other athletic fields?
So, if you drive by any of the fields really in town right now after the water ban, you'll see that most of their turf has come back. The infield on Majors Field, which is the one right down the street across from kind of the pickleball courts, it has this big snack shack in the back. The infield will not come back. It is gone, essentially. It is well beyond the board to do that maintenance and repair on our volunteer basis for the volunteers that are on the board. We've gotten quotes from a company that, not just a landscaper, but a company that does baseball facilities. And we've added a small amount to ensure that, so the request is going to be not to exceed $20,000. We're uncertain at this point if the prevailing wage will need to be used for the work, so it will not exceed $20,000, and it is literally the infield grass and then the border turf as the turf begins at the outfield and the warning track areas.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm just curious, it seems to be that the boards are always looking for contributions, and how's the fees and everything from, because up until this, it was always taken care of, even paying people
Yeah.
to mow the lawn was done
Yep.
by the fields,
Yep.
the fees.
Sure. The Millis Youth Baseball does have resources at its disposal that are used to operate the league, to maintain the fields. We pay a water bill. Those fields are town property. There's an agreement of some sort, whether it's written or a handshake. Those fields are town property, operated by Millis Youth Baseball. We add, playground mix and different materials every year to bring them up to speed in the spring. We pay for all of the adding mix during the season, adding the dry mix when it rains, so that we can keep the season going. So there is all the lime that's needed to line the fields, maintain the snack shack, maintain the fences. Those are what we are prepared to, that the board, Millis Youth Baseball, is prepared to use our resources for. In this particular case, you may have recall that I asked Mr. McKay as to whether, with the new water permit, if there would be an exemption for non-residences to water, because we can anticipate there'll be droughts, and I don't think anybody wants to put another $20,000 into the field every year just because it's dried out. So I think that has to be considered as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Garzon?
In looking at kind of the structure of the warrant in terms of the article flow, I wonder if Article 7 is in the best place in comparison to the other larger articles. I understand kind of, I can see why it was put where it was, and, near the capital items, and the feasibility study for the middle high school. But having the senior center there, in that Article 7, and then the petition articles at the end, makes it a little bit disjointed, especially considering the potential for, from the floor, a request to reconsider an article, if folks have left after Article 7.
I'll just say that I went to the select board meeting on Monday. The issue of sequence was discussed, and that's what they decided on. I don't necessarily feel that, this committee should give them a recommendation on that. But that's just my opinion. If everybody, if there's sentiment amongst us that we should do that, then I'm open to it. I personally don't. I know that they discussed it, and I know that this is not haphazard.
Yeah,
I
historically.
defer to them. I defer to Craig Schultz, who knows what he's doing, as well as the other two board members. He was advised by a little bit, I don't remember exactly what was said, but Mr. Kaczynski, and I suspect that they'll consult with town attorney as well.
Well, actually, it's the moderator. He could pick the numbers from a hat, and it's his authority, so, final say.
They're listed here. If Mr. Canareggi wants to do what he wants, I mean,
Right.
I'm not,
Yeah,
you're right.
I agree with Ms. Garcon, though, that my concern is the petition articles are very significant. We spent a lot of time talking about Rockland, and with this many articles, as I said, 10 minutes each, to get through 22 of them, we're almost at 4 hours before we get to the petition articles. And what I recall from the select board meeting was it was just matter of fact, petition articles are always last. There wasn't really any discussion on it. And Article 25 is really an alternative to Article 7. So those are kind of, in my thinking, kind of alternatives that will probably somehow in the meeting get discussed simultaneously, whether we want to or not. So, I'm afraid that you could also have Rockland, 22 people signed that. We could be down to, at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, just those people that signed the petition there. Because a lot of people will have to put kids to bed or whatever, so. That's my 2 cents.
It was requested to do this on a Saturday, but brighter minds prevailed.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, historically, we have commented on the sequencing at different times, but obviously, it lies with the select board to decide how they want to
Well,
sequence that.
again,
But I have no,
They can put what they want in the
Yeah,
warrant.
absolutely.
And we can tell them what we think about it. I'm
Yes.
happy, if others feel like the 2 members that have spoken, I'm happy to do that. I'm not stifling our ability to give them input. I think that's what we're here to do. So others can speak up, we can take it to a vote, and we can discuss what we think. We can either, be vague and tell them we don't like your order, or we can give them specific order.
Well, I happen to agree that the sequence is, I think that the sequence is off.
Okay, so somebody who feels that way, please take some notes so that we can make a motion and we'll vote on it. Let's continue the discussion and give them specific feedback of what we'd like to see. I'm fine with that.
So what happens, Mr. Chair? I mean, we can talk about this, not waste Mr. Kaczynski's time. What happens if, like, the senior center is approved, and then when we get down to here, can someone make a motion to reconsider that article, and then,
Yes.
okay.
yes.
Yeah,
And,
I've
Mr.
never
Chair?
noticed this before.
Go ahead.
Another thing is that anyone at town meeting at any time can move the articles with the majority vote. So they can move Article 17 and make it Article 1. So we could spend all day building sandcastles with the select board, but one vote can just knock it all down.
That's why we have a moderator who has the authority to conduct town meeting, within the rules of, he gets a lot of discretion.
Mr. Chair, I'm not at the point of wanting to vote on recommending a move. I'm just wanted to make that comment that,
Okay.
to bring it to their attention that they may want to reconsider that sequencing, but if this is the sequence that they like, that's
Okay,
fine.
so given that, I'll propose that I will give them that feedback, that we have concerns about the sequence, and that if if we feel so compelled next week, we will provide them with our recommended sequence. And next week, we'll set aside time. This week, we'll put some thought into it so that we can have that, prepared, and then we can go forward with it. Is that
Yeah, I
acceptable?
think because of the significance of the petition articles, it'd be good if those were earlier, because most of these are just
I understand.
perfunctory.
I understand.
And to that end, Mr. Chairman, just, I know you're aware of this, but just to make sure the whole Finance Committee is aware, the Select Board will not be meeting again till October 17th, so your meeting next week, they will not be meeting in between. So at their meeting of October 17th, they'll be voting to approve the final warrant and to sign it.
And they
So-
will open it, correct?
They will.
So we'll
there'll
be there.
There'll be an opportunity for them to reconsider anything based on any input they receive. I cannot say they will make any changes, but they will certainly review any requests or recommendations.
Okay. Okay. All right, any more comments on, or questions for Mr. Kaczynski while he's here? Ms. Johnston, well, while the town has got the table.
Last week, Ms. Gazan asked me about the ARPA funding, so I told her I would have that information for her today. The town received $2,483,915 from both the Treasury and Norfolk County as part of our ARPA funding. Of that money, $48,000, $48,423.52 was given as county administration for the county's portion that they're handling for us. So in total, the town actually received $2,435,492.16. I can send you this document tomorrow, so you don't have to write it all down. It's just
That'd be great.
Small spreadsheet. So far on the ARPA project, which is the well 1 and 2, we spent $1,434,587. So we have a remaining balance of $1,904.95 of the ARPA money, and then we will tap into the ban that we have of $3 million.
The what?
The ban, which is the bond anticipation
Oh,
note that
okay.
we have.
Sure.
It won't go into a final bond until the project's complete, but for right now, we have the funds available.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay.
I asked Ms. Johnston a question during the week via email, which she has answered, and that is, just give me an idea of what the free cash relative to past years, what it is. So the free cash number is roughly $2.9 million. That's sufficient for my purposes in this discussion. The average amount that we received over, say, the last 10 years is $831,000 plus almost $832,000. Which is average out to be about 2.73% of the operating budget. So 2.9 million is wildly, in over what we typically would get. Only 3 years previous, in the previous 10-plus years, have we received over $1 million, and only once have we received over $2 million in free cash. So this year is I don't want to say it's a windfall, because that implies, we don't want to get crazy. But those are a significant amount of resources that we don't typically get for free cash.
Right, so last year it was $2 million, just over $2 million, and this year it's $2,926,232. I just want everybody to realize that out of that money, $892,192 was from either marijuana impact funds or the local option 3% on the recreational marijuana. We
Which
also
won't
had-
go away, Mr. Chair, right?
One of them will.
Well, so
The
the.
3% doesn't.
Right, so the,
Okay.
so the marijuana impact funds, which is the HCE money,
Yeah.
that goes away after 5 years. I know there's some speculation with new legislation that was passed that on annual renewal of the license for the recreational facility, that it has to be reviewed by the Cannabis Control Commission. So, and in that new legislation, we would have to prepay from our operating budget the expenses associated with marijuana and then present a bill to the facility afterwards for them to review, to decide whether or not the funds were spent appropriately. That's what the new legislation says. Right now, we're going on that it's business as usual with the 5-year contract that we have. So we did receive our payment that was due us in September. And so we won't get, we'll have, or at the end of August, and then our next payment will be due in November. So we'll have to see how that works out. But we are eligible always to get the 3% local options tax. That is a definite. The host community agreement is based on our agreement. So with the new legislation, the maximum time of a host community agreement is 8 years. Our current one with the ones that we have with the town currently are 5-year periods. So on the ones that are pretty much haven't been activated because there's no business yet for the grow facilities, those will probably have to go between to the Cannabis Control Commission for review before we receive any funds for those. So there's just a little bit of speculation. And we have noticed that the receipts are less than they have been in previous months. It continues to go down for the marijuana money, meaning that, so whether or not people are turning to the medical marijuana, which we currently get a 3% on, but just on an annual basis, so that they don't have to pay the local options tax, and that's not part of the adult use marijuana. Whether they're shifting to medical, we don't know, but obviously there are a lot of other marijuana facilities that are opening up on a retail basis. So there's cannibalism on that part. So there's a lot of mixture. Just want to caution everybody that it's probably not going to stay significantly higher for a long period of time.
You'd warned us on that before, that it
Right.
was going to diminish.
Right.
Ms. Johnson, when could you provide us kind of the breakdown of the free cash? What is considered must-pays out of that? Have you already done that?
I have already done that.
Okay, all right.
So in our current, in the current warrant that you have right now, we will be spending 1.237 million on the current way that the warrant is written. That would leave us a balance of 1.7 million. And out of that money, the remainder money, 271,000 of that is from HTE money, so that would have to be set aside. And the remainder for the general fund would be 1.4 million.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before she
Ms.
leaves.
Johnson?
A different calculation that would be helpful for us to have as we head into town meeting, seeing the funds that we do have left over in free cash to allocate would be, what is the target amount for the stabilization fund based on our most recent fiscal budget?
So on our most recent fiscal budget, it's just a little under 300,000 to get us to even for the FY '22. So that's why I put 300,000.
Okay.
As the number here. Obviously, in the spring, when our new budget season takes hold and we have a new budget number.
Right.
We will probably have to fund this, or should fund the stabilization again to bring it up to what it should be for the FY '24 budget. So.
Could you provide those numbers to us kind of in written form to
Well, I can't
Deirdre?
provide you the 24 yet.
No, not the 24 yet.
That would be pretty good of me. But
I know. I bet you've been thinking about it.
You're real close to
I
it,
bet,
though.
yeah,
If
I
anyone
bet you
could
she
do
could
it.
get it within a couple pennies.
I'm pretty sure she could. But yeah, if you could get us kind of how you got to that 300, that would be helpful for whoever's going to have that article.
Yep,
Thank you.
no problem.
Mr. Chair,
Ms.
I
McGinnis?
keep thinking of Mr. Stedman's question last week about the sped money. Is anybody, do you want to remember that, John, that you talked about?
I just
Like,
suggested it'd be
what are
good to
they-
know that,
what's the-
because it was a
Right.
$500,000 surprise
Right.
last year. The select board asked the same question
Right,
on Monday
right.
night.
I do not, I am not privy
So
to
the
the
school-
details on
The
that.
school board will be here next week, and we
Oh,
can ask
okay.
them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And they've told us before that they anticipate similar shortfall, but we should ask them next week.
For next year?
For whatever they know.
Fiscal year
Yes.
23?
For one time.
Wow.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Schultz
Have the
better
same
be careful
kids.
what he says then.
Have the same needs.
Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Carroll.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks for staying late.
Anything else for me, Mr. Chairman?
We didn't like
We'll
you.
think of something if you stay
Yeah,
around long
stay
enough.
around. Go, Carol, go.
I would say run while you can.
If you find $20,000 in the budget for some turf,
Yeah.
thank you. I
Can't
know you
find
will.
much more. There's a lot there.
Okay, I wanted to at least start to go over article assignments. And I've already put some in. I've got Joyce Boyardi for article, so based on 27 articles, the potential for 27 articles and 9 members, that's simple math even I can do, three each, ideally. I've got Joyce down for unpaid bills and OPEB funding, and I'll find another one for her before the night is through. I don't have anyone for Article 2.
I don't mind doing that.
Okay. I've got Jody Garzon. Personnel plan amendments.
I can take that one too.
Thank you, Jody. I've got myself down for capital items. I will not do Article 5. I'd like a volunteer. Or Mr. Gatto. Thank you, sir. I've got myself down for Article 6 and Article 7. It's typical of the chair to take the high-hanging fruit, and if I tap out, I will let you know and ask for help. I have Peter Underhill for Article 8, Article 9.
Thank you.
And if any objections, please, I'm just telling you what I've penciled in pen. Article 10, that is the settlement for the environmental issues at 12 through 14 Exchange Street. Any volunteers for Article 10? Repayment to Advisa for cannabis HCA deposit. So I'm a little familiar with that one. That is, this particular entity was operating or was seeking to operate out of the Colt facility. Things didn't go well, and they will not be operating out of the Colt
Right, so
facility.
it's a refund.
Yeah, I don't mind taking that one.
Okay. If anybody wants stuff, speak up. Funding for the FY22 snow and ice deficit. That is Mr. Lohr. Lead line, Kathy, just frankly, I've already got you penned in, penciled in for 15 and 16, because I look to you as our enterprise experts.
Glad
So,
someone did. The other board didn't.
so 13 and 14, lead line service inventory and replacement plan.
I'll do that.
Okay. John Stedman.
And I'll do 14
Water management, please don't take more than 3. John,
That's 2 for me.
okay. So 14 also, John?
Yeah.
Or no, okay. So Kathy, 15, 16. Number 17, engineering services for infiltration and inflow.
I can take
I and I, Kathy. Unemployment account.
Want to do that one?
Okay, John, thank you. Joyce, I have you for, I'm sorry, I skipped.
I can do 9.
Kathy, I also have you for 19
Oh, I was
because
gonna say,
of
I
your,
could do
but,
19.
but I'm gonna
Take off
scratch,
the
Give it to
engineering.
Joyce.
I'm gonna scratch you off of, that one, and I'm gonna put Joyce on there, okay? OPEB's Joyce, Chapter 41, Section 111, Injury Leave and Indemnity Fund. That is Sarah Reyes.
I had it in the spring, so it just makes sense.
Yep. 22, oh, this is the ambulance fund. This is actually funding the ambulance fund, right, I think, or is it establishing?
Right.
Established,
The
says it right there, first
establishment.
word.
Yeah, there's not a number.
Who do I got?
Can you
John?
give that to Sarah?
Who's that, sir?
John Lohr. Stabilization fund,
I mean, I'll take it.
it's too easy for you.
I know, I can just write it in my sleep.
I'm
I don't
gonna-
mind doing one of the petitions,
I'm
though.
gonna have you do one of the petitions.
Yeah,
So,
not one of the petitions.
stabilization, I'm gonna have Patrick do that. Patrick, your go-to for knowledge on that, you probably already know it, but is Jody.
So 23 is Patrick.
I have
23 is Patrick.
spreadsheets, you know, but I want to get it from her.
All right, listen, for citizens petitions, and really any of the articles, these are subject to change along the lines of how we vote. If somebody is in the minority and they're penned in against something, then we could make a switch. Also, depending on the vote, if the vote qualifies for a minority report, then we'll have a minority report done, and the minority can select who they want to do it, okay? So, with that said, these are subject to change. Citizens petition, sports facility. I could go through and,
I'll be against that, so.
I'm against it as well, so.
well, geez, we haven't even had discussion and debate.
I know.
Everybody just,
That was just thrown out there.
okay.
Well, Sarah, do you want to take it?
So if you think you're against something, please just hold back. Don't volunteer. If you think you're the potential to go for it, volunteer. But,
But it depends on,
yeah, it really depends, because we could be in majority against it, and then that person would be just fine.
Exactly.
So
I think
please
it's
just
kind of a
volunteer.
crapshoot on
Just
the
volunteer, and we'll change
petitions.
it according. So if somebody volunteer for sports facility number 24.
Sarah did.
Sarah, thank you.
Oh, I don't think she did.
She
I
did now.
volunteered that I am against it, but I will definitely write a dissent to it.
Okay. 25, senior center. All right, I have 3.
I have
Jody
3.
has, how
I
many
have
you have?
2.
You have 2?
I have
Yeah.
two,
Hold on. John Stedman, you have 2. Kathy, you have 3.
3, yes, sir.
Sarah, you have 2. Patrick has 3. Joyce has 3, right? Joyce, you have 1.
No, I have 3.
Yep, she's
Right,
Oh,
1, 2,
yes.
3, I was counting them
Oh,
out.
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Lohr,
Three.
3.
Who's on first? What's on
Mr.
second?
Underhill,
3.
3.
I can't do all petitions.
No.
I'll be dissenting in
Okay, so
both.
we'll do some horse trading, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't mind
Alright.
swapping number 11, and I'll take, with Sarah, and then I'll take one of the
yeah,
petitions.
Okay, one at a time, So you're gonna trade, thank you.
Yeah, 11's an easy lift.
Player to be named labor. What are you
Um,
offering?
11.
Trade?
So
Am I doing 24 and 11 now?
It's about to, it looks that way, hold on one second. Hold on. So I have 3 articles left between Jody, Sarah, and John.
right.
If,
I'll do 26.
hold on, John Stedman, okay, so.
I'll do
let's-
27.
Hold on, John Stedman. I gotta write this down. That's 3 for John.
Jody said 27.
Jody said 27, okay, Jody, you got it.
So Pete Underhill said he'd do,
And
Anyway.
Sarah has 3, but I don't want her to do 2 citizens petitions, so, Peter Underhill said he would switch.
Yeah, I'll give up 11.
Okay, so Sarah, you're now doing 11.
Okay. Thank you.
Sarah Reyes, and Peter Underhill is now doing 25.
All right, good. Now, what's 25?
Citizen petition,
25.
senior center.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right.
wait a second,
Okay.
he's doing 24 and 25?
Nope,
I'm still doing
Sarah's doing 24.
Yeah.
Deirdre, I'm gonna read through these once, and I'll also follow up with you tomorrow, okay?
Okay, okay,
You ready?
sure.
Okay, Article 1, Joyce Boyardi. Article 2, Jody Garzon. Article 3, Jody Garzon. Article 4, Berube. Article 5 was Patrick, sorry. Berube's number 6, Berube's number 7, Underhill number 8, Underhill number 9, Patrick Gatto number, am I pronouncing it right, Gatto? Gatto, 10. Sarah Reyes, 11, John Lohr, 12, John Stedman, 13, Stedman, 14, Kathy McGinnis, 15, McGinnis, 16, McGinnis, 17, John Lohr, 18, Joyce Boyardi, 19, Joyce 20, Reyes 21, Lore 22, Gatto 23, Reyes 24, Underhill 25, Stedman 26, Gatto 27. Garzon, sorry. Joey. PG.
You got the G right.
Thank you, until the last one.
What did he call it, Gaston?
Gatto.
Gatto.
That's Patrick's.
But I was just going off the G. It's late, it's late.
Gazon.
All right, we do have a couple of bills. No, we don't. Do we?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Garzon.
I move that we approve the payment of $971.18 for postage to the postmaster for fall 2022.
I said, oh,
It's been moved and seconded that we vote to approve postage bill in the amount of $971.18 to the postmaster for fall town meeting, Deirdre?
It is, I just wanted to noted that, there were 41 additional homes that needed, that were added, plus an increase of, 6 cents per mailing piece.
Okay.
So like, typically it's like maybe $700, so the reason it's so high is because of the additional homes and, addition of postage.
Okay,
So-
well, it's a requirement, not like we're gonna exclude those folks. Could you just make sure that next budget cycle, we increase our budget accordingly?
I will.
Okay. And then is it like a metered rate, not a weighted rate? So does it depend on number of pages?
It's, right, so it has to do with, per piece
Okay,
and then, the weight, but we'll be fine with weight.
okay, all right. Any further discussion? None heard? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Garzon.
I move that we approve the minutes of our Finance Committee meeting of September 28th as written.
It's been moved and seconded that we vote to approve the minutes for our September 28th meeting as written. Discussion. None heard. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Okay, Deirdre,
Thank you, Deirdre.
Yep.
anything from you before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we should be good.
Okay, so just so everybody's aware, wrote this down, next week is gonna be another marathon meeting. Where's my agenda? So next week, we have, school is coming, Mr. Germain is going to present, his articles, Mr. Barry is coming. Did I miss anybody, Deirdre? School? Germain,
Nope,
Mr. Barry, those are the three. If we add anybody else, we'll let you know. Okay, so we will, I doubt, highly doubt that we'll take any votes next week, but if we can, we will. October 19th, that meeting will be likely most, if not all, of our discussion. We will do our voting and our discussion on everything, right? If we can't vote on something, it'll highly likely that it will be a recommend at town meeting, which we can do, but we usually choose not to, usually that, we prefer not to. So the write-ups for, this is like a homework assignment, and it's literally 2 sentences, 3 max. Your synopsis, which will go into our booklet that we were just talking about mailing, will be due by Friday the 21st, because those things have to hit the mail on the Monday the 24th, right, Deirdre?
Yes, we have to go to print on the 24th
Okay.
in order
So
to
we're
get the.
absolutely bumping up to the suspense, and I don't want to put Deirdre or anybody else, including myself, in the position of having to work on this all weekend long in order to meet a Monday suspense. So I'm asking you to please carve out some time to write literally 6 sentences, and be prepared to help others that, that have experience in the articles that you've written before. So please set aside some time on your calendar for Thursday and Friday, you know, a couple hours to write the sentences, get any feedback you need, ask any questions you have before then. Again, it's just a synopsis. It's just basically, hey, this is the article, this is the major point, and this is how the Finance Committee voted on it. It's very, very simple. It is not your discussion comments. You'll have time before town meeting on the 10th of November to come up with your discussion and really get into the weeds and help people compel people to vote the way that the Finance Committee advocated that they do. Or vice versa, if you're doing a minority report. You know, you have until the 10th to do that, and nobody's checking those. You'll have the motions, and then it's, again, your discussion comments are really the details that we get during these meetings. That's why it's important to read the minutes, take notes. But the synopses that are due on Friday the 21st are very simple. You know, you have resources to help you with that. I'm happy to help out. Jody's happy to help out. I have records of all of those that I've written in the past. So none of them, especially if it's a repeat article, you need to write from scratch, okay? All right, any questions before we go, Mr. Stebbins?
I've got just two things. One, I will not be able to attend personally on the 19th. I'll be out of town. I'll try to do it by Zoom.
Okay. Do you want to proxy me all your votes, or?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. You heard it here.
Yeah, right.
Just joking.
And second thing, on the Council of Aging on the Senior Center, I believe I got those numbers looking at their website. So their website does have the complete study that was done by the engineering firm that has the numbers in it. So I would encourage everybody to go to the COA website and look at those documents.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, take a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I don't know how to keep myself organized.
Like 11 million, then a miracle.
Night, everyone.